Lightning splits the sky over a dense, dark forest as the rain begins to pour. The forest floor is littered with the bodies of fallen warriors, their blood mixing with the rainwater in the mud. Standing alone in the center of the carnage is Wu Chengrin, his body covered in wounds and pierced by multiple arrows. He coughs up a mouthful of blood, his voice barely a whisper as he counts his 64th kill. Suddenly, a slow and mocking clap echoes through the trees. The Divine Light sect leader steps into the clearing, followed by a squad of masked elite warriors. He smiles at the sight of the battered swordsman, mocking the fact that he's somehow still alive after being sliced to ribbons. Wu Chengrin stands silently, his head bowed as he gathers what little strength he has left. The leader walks forward with arrogant confidence, his feet splashing through the blood-soaked grass. He laughs, pointing at the swordsman and questioning if his legendary sword style can save him in such a pathetic state. Wu Chengrin looks up with cold eyes, telling the villain that he knows absolutely nothing about his true power. The leader dismisses it as a bluff, certain that the man before him is only seconds away from death. He gives the order, and the masked elites leap into the air with their blades drawn to finish the job. Raindrops are scattered by the sudden movement of a blade, dripping with fresh blood. Wu Chengrin unleashes a devastating circular strike, carving through the rain and his attackers in a single motion. More bodies hit the ground as he calmly updates his kill count to 67. He stares down the remaining enemies, noting that half of the Divine Light sect's elites have already perished by his hand. The leader remains unfazed, considering the loss of his men a fair trade for eliminating the man once called the future's greatest. He jumps into the air, creating distance as he prepares his own final attack. He lands lightly on the wet ground, a wicked grin spreading across his face. The remaining masked warriors start to circle back, leaving their leader to face the swordsman alone. Wu Chengrin lets out a sharp exhale, his body trembling from the strain and blood loss. The leader taunts him further, betting that the swordsman can't even swing his blade one more time. Wu Chengrin tells him he's talking too much, and suggests they all attack at once because he's getting tired. The leader's smile vanishes, replaced by a look of pure rage as he screams the swordsman's name. He lunges forward with a massive overhead strike, determined to end the legend with one blow. Wu Chengrin counters with a blindingly fast strike of his own, the force of it splitting the very air. The leader's eyes widen in shock as his attack is bypassed before he can even react. A deep, jagged slash tears across the villain's face, spraying blood into the rainy air. The force of the blow sends the leader flying back, his face a ruin of blood and torn flesh. The swordsman stands victorious for a moment, asking if the villain finally understands the true power of the ninefold style. His gaze is cold and terrifying as he watches the survivors flee into the darkness. He marks his 68th kill as he stands alone among the pile of corpses. With the immediate threat gone, Wu Chengrin begins to limp away from the carnage, his strength fading fast. Every step is a struggle, his boots dragging through the mud and blood of the battlefield. He clutches his side, his hand covered in fresh blood as he fights to stay upright. Finally, his body reaches its limit, and the legendary swordsman collapses onto the cold, wet ground. He gasps for air, his face pale and his eyes unfocused as his life begins to drain away. He sighs, realizing that taking on 120 men was a bit too much, even for someone of his stature. In his final moments, his thoughts turn to a promise he made to Yongmi, a promise he won't be able to keep. His vision starts to fade to black as he stares blankly into the rainy distance. Wu Chengrin lies still in the mud, his hand resting weakly on the martial arts manual as the forest falls silent. Wu Chengrin clutches his blood-stained manual, his only regret being that he couldn't force his enemies to feel remorse before the end. He lay abandoned in the silent expanse, a harrowing trail of blood etching the path he had crawled to get here. A delicate purple flower sways gently in the breeze, its beauty hiding a deadly secret known only to a few. The legendary swordsman's eyes are heavy and unfocused, weighted down by the impending approach of death. A young boy named Heo Jaseo appears from the shadows, holding out the poisonous flower with a hollow, weary look in his eyes. Wu Chengrin manages a weak, bloody smile as he looks up at the child and asks about the strange grass he's holding. Jaseo warns him with surprising bluntness not to eat the plant, no matter how desperate or hungry he might feel. He explains that while it acts as a powerful painkiller, the poison is so subtle that a person will die without ever realizing they've been compromised. But under the current circumstances, it was clear to both of them that this poisonous bloom was his best solution. The young boy stares at the dying man with an expression that is far too mature and cynical for someone of his age. The night wind whistles through the trees, carrying away the scattered leaves as the two strangers face one another. Jaseo goes back to digging a hole in the dirt with a pointed stick, seemingly indifferent to the legend dying right next to him. Taking the flower from the boy, Wu Chengrin stuffs the poisonous flower into his mouth and begins to chew. Jaseo couldn't care less. He kept on digging, his pace growing more frantic as if he were in a race against Chengrin's fatting life. The swordsman swallows the bitter medicine and asks the boy for his name. The boy looks down at the mud and quietly identifies himself as Heo Jaseo. Wu Chengrin notes how the boy handles the concept of death with such ease, guessing that he's already had to bury his own family. He tells Jaseo to stop his digging for a moment and give him his full attention. He holds out the 9-fold, soul-shattering sword manual, its cover heavily stained by his own blood. He believes that someone with a heart as hardened as Jaseo's might actually be able to master the secrets within. He urges the boy to take the legacy and use it to carve out a place for himself in the world. Jaseo isn't impressed by the offer and flatly refuses, asking for food instead of a blood-soaked book. He points out that becoming a martial arts master just seems to lead to a lonely, miserable death in the dirt. A faint smile plays across the swordsman's lips as the boy's blunt, cynical words hit home. Suddenly, Wu Chengrin bursts into a fit of genuine, ragged laughter that shakes his entire body. He realizes the kid is right. Revealing your strength to the world is nothing more than an invitation for an early grave. He shoved the rest of the poison into his mouth, his laughter slowly fatting as the venom began to take hold of his system. Jaseo watches him silently, unsure what to make of the dying man's sudden and violent outburst. Blood continues to leak from the wounds on his face, but the legendary swordsman looks more at peace than he has all night. The boy stands quietly before the fallen master, the two of them alone in the stillness of the clearing. Jaseo reaches out to steady the man as his strength finally begins to completely fail him. The boy helped the tall warrior lean against his shoulder, his small frame straining under the heavy weight. The boy helped the man forward, offering whatever little help and comfort he could in these final, fleeting moments. Wu Chengrin observes that despite his skinny frame, the boy was born with an exceptional physique for martial arts. He also notices a sharp spark of intelligence in Jaseo's eyes that sets him apart from ordinary commoners. He proposes a different path. Instead of becoming a master, Jaseo should learn the sword and remain a permanent novice. He tried to convince the boy that if the world viewed him as weak, they would always overlook him, allowing him to survive. Jaseo looks away, still claiming that he has no interest in following the path of a warrior. He admits that the man reminds him too much of the father who abandoned him years ago. The boy assumes his father probably died in a ditch somewhere, just like the man he's currently helping. Wu Chengrin listens to the boy's bitter words with a gaze that has softened into genuine empathy. He reaches out a bandaged, trembling hand and softly tells the boy to come closer to him. He pulls the orphan into a firm embrace, confessing that Jaseo reminds him of the daughter he left behind. The young boy is momentarily stunned by the physical warmth of the dying man's embrace, a heat that stands in stark contrast to the cold mud around them. Wu Chengrin's final words are a soft lament, telling the boy that his life might have been different if he had been born as his own son. For a fleeting moment, the stranger's touch brings back the long-buried memory of Jaseo's own father's embrace. Jaseo pulls away slightly, his eyes wide as he realizes the life is finally draining out of the legendary warrior. The great swordsman slumps against the boy one last time before his body goes limp, the arrows in his back a grim testament to his final battle. Wu Chengrin collapses into the dirt with a final, echoing command for the boy to live his life as a hidden novice. Jaseo stands frozen over the body, the reality of the legendary man's death slowly beginning to sink into his young mind. The man he met by pure coincidence has passed away, leaving the boy alone in the quiet forest once more. The only thing remaining is the blood-stained manual, a legacy of power left behind by a man who died just as miserably as any commoner. 15 years pass, and the young boy has grown into a lean, sharp-eyed man who carries himself with the quiet confidence of a hidden master. Heo Jaseo has spent the intervening decade and a half relentlessly practicing the techniques found within the old manual. He quickly discovered that most of the advanced sword forms were far too complex and difficult to understand without proper guidance. To compensate, he began to omit the parts he couldn't grasp, modifying the movements to better suit the natural flow of his own body. His sword strikes are fluid and precise, a testament to years of solitary practice in the heart of the wilderness. For the sections that required the cultivation of inner chi, he had to find alternative sources of knowledge. He eventually acquired a cultivation method by pinning down a drunkard at a local inn and forcing the man to reveal his secrets. However, he soon realized the method was just a simple breathing technique used by elderly men to maintain their health. Determined to honor the dying man's wish, Jaseo fully committed himself to becoming the perfect hidden novice. He focuses on his blade, his brow furrowed as he tries to reconcile the legendary techniques with his own limited knowledge. He thoroughly polished the parts of the manual he could handle, turning himself into a formidable, albeit unconventional, warrior. His eyes are cold and focused as he prepares to sheath his blade after another grueling training session. He managed to master a drawing and sheathing technique that looks incredibly convincing to any outside observer. He decided to rename his modified style, the Tenfold Soul Training Sword, to reflect its personal evolution. The new forms had become so different from the original manual that they were no longer recognizable as the Ninefold style. He unsheathed his sword with a sharp mechanical click that echoed through the clearing. He lashes out with a sudden strike, his movements a blur of speed and controlled aggression. But despite the impressive appearance of his forms, the actual destructive power of his technique is surprisingly lacking. Jaseo scratches his cheek with a sheepish grin, fully aware that his masterful display was mostly for show. He practices his dramatic poses, wondering if he needs to raise his arms slightly more to truly look like a legendary master. Satisfied with his performance for the day, he turns his thoughts toward finding a hot bowl of soup and some rice. But as he turned to walk away, he had no idea that his training session had left a deep, clean vertical split straight through the massive tree he was using as a target. A pair of boots steps onto a vibrant red carpet, heading toward a grand destination. Heo Jaseo looks down with the heavy, focused gaze of a man who's seen it all. He knows that for an ordinary person, meeting a true master is a once-in-a-lifetime event. These legends have the power to move nations and shake the very foundations of the earth. In this grand hall, lines of warriors form a path, waiting for a presence that commands respect. Each step is deliberate, carrying the weight of a reputation that precedes him. Men bow their heads and clasp their hands, showing the ultimate sign of deference to a superior. Jaseo walks through the parting crowd like a god among men, his face a mask of calm authority. He looks like the ultimate martial arts master, ready to take on the world. But inside, he's absolutely panicking. The truth is, this guy is nothing but a total novice. Welcome to Fort Manryang, a massive recruitment hub where every martial artist in the land is gathering. Jaseo joins the line at the registration desk, keeping his master persona dialed all the way up. The registration officer looks up from his scroll and asks for the name of the new recruit. Jaseo stares back with an intense, narrow gaze that would make a lesser man tremble. The old man waits for a response, brush poised and ready to record his details. Instead of speaking, Jaseo decides to show off a little, grabbing the brush right out of the officer's hand. He leans over the scroll, concentrating as if he's about to transcribe a legendary martial manual. He writes his name with such elegance and speed that the ink barely has time to dry. The officer is stunned. Finding a common wanderer who can read and write is like finding a needle in a haystack. He starts to wonder if this guy is secretly from one of those fancy orthodox sects. Jaseo just smiles. The truth is, his name and a few fake techniques are the only things he knows how to write. Now for the finishing touch, coming up with a cool-sounding name for his non-existent martial art. He settles on the Dark Star Escort Sword, writing it out in a style that looks incredibly prestigious. The officer mumbles the name to himself, looking confused because he's never heard of it, but he's too impressed to care. Jaseo asks if there's a problem with his application, his tone flat and unwavering. The officer quickly clears him and tells him to head over to Blue Room 19, a place for mid-tier masters. As soon as he's in the clear, Jaseo loses it. The plan worked. He won't have to worry about food for a long time. He quickly composes himself and nods, pretending like getting into the high-status rooms was expected. The Blue Room is the sweet spot, better than the basic dorms, but not as dangerous as where the top grandmasters hang out. He walks down the corridor, looking for his room number while trying to blend in with the other warriors. His strategy is simple. Lie low, eat as much free food as he can, and bail before the tournament actually starts. A heavenly scent wafts from the kitchen, and for a second, Jaseo's master facade almost crumbles from pure joy. He steps into his new quarters, but he's not alone. Two other martial artists are already there mid-meal. Simjeol and Sogukai stop eating and hit him with the most intense, soul-piercing glares imaginable. Jaseo realizes instantly that these guys are going to be a huge pain in the neck if he gets on their bad side. The servant gave him a bright, welcoming smile, greeting him and inviting him to join the meal. He keeps a close eye on them, trying to figure out if they've already seen through his act. The only sound in the room is the steady trickle of water as a cup is filled, adding to the thick tension. Simjeol leans forward, his gaze locked onto Jaseo as he demands to know his name. Jaseo takes a deep breath and introduces himself smoothly, drawing on years of practice staying calm under pressure. He knows that the more he talks, the more likely it is that he'll trip up and expose his lack of skill. Even if he doesn't look like a legendary grandmaster, he has to make sure they don't see him as the novice he really is. A hand firmly sets a white cup on the table, the clink echoing in the quiet room. Jaseo nods, keeping his voice steady as he acknowledges their gaze. Simjeol gestures to himself and his companion, introducing So Gukai with a smirk that seems to challenge the newcomer. He watches Jaseo's reaction closely, looking for any sign of hesitation. Jaseo takes a slow sip from his cup, appearing unbothered as he tells them to wait a moment. Internally, he's already scanning his memory for anything useful about these two. So Gukai leans in, his expression sharpening as he asks the million-dollar question. What sect does Jaseo hail from? The tension in the room ratchets up another notch. Jaseo plays the modest wanderer, claiming he's never found a proper sect and only knows his family's secret sword arts. It's a classic bluff designed to keep his true lack of skill hidden. So Gukai drains his cup, mentioning that they are from the Chang'an region in Shanxi. He seems satisfied with his own status, barely giving Jaseo a second thought for now. Jaseo jumps on the mention of Chang'an, immediately asking if they belong to the famous Jiangnam sect. He knows that showing off a bit of Jianghu knowledge is the best way to earn their respect. He maintains a confident grin, knowing that in this world, survival often depends on how well you can talk your way out of a corner. Identifying their sect just from their hometown is a master move. Simjeol confirms his guess with a proud look, and Jaseo can feel the trap he set starting to work. The atmosphere in the room shifts from suspicious to slightly more welcoming. Jaseo leans in with a look of intense focus, ready to drop the next piece of his plan. He knows exactly which legendary figure to mention to really seal the deal. He starts spinning a tale about a battle he supposedly witnessed, where masters of the Mount Hua sect were being cut down like autumn leaves. His voice is full of false reverence as he speaks. Then he mentions Taoist Wu Hyun appearing and making the enemy disappear without a trace. It's pure flattery, and he delivers it with a straight face that would put a professional actor to shame. He caps it off by praising the Jiangnam sect for truly living up to its legendary name, calling the display absolutely incredible. He watches the impact of his words on the two men. Simjeol is completely won over, letting out a loud laugh as he expresses his delight at meeting someone who witnessed their master's greatness. The hostility from before has vanished completely, so Gukai even offers to go buy more alcohol just so they can hear more of Jaseo's incredible stories. He's grinning from ear to ear, clearly enjoying the ego boost. As the three of them share a laugh over the table, Jaseo reflects on how easy it is to make friends when you know exactly what they want to hear. The barracks feel a lot more comfortable now. He keeps his smug smirk hidden behind his cup, knowing that the secret to getting along with these hot-blooded types is just to keep them happy and avoid any direct conflict. The sun shines brightly over the sprawling grounds of Fort Manryang, a place filled with both opportunity and danger. Jaseo walks through the courtyards, his mind already on his next move. He takes in the scale of the place, marveling at the wealth and power on display. It's hard to believe this entire fortress was built by just one of the 5 great wealthy clans. His eyes sharpen as he considers the sheer number of masters who have gathered here. The competition is going to be fierce, but as long as he plays it smart, he should be fine. The central pavilion is massive, comparable in size to the headquarters of the great sects themselves. It's a testament to the influence of the Manjian fortress. Even the sparring arenas have clearly had a lot of work put into them, with warriors already practicing their moves in the open space. The whole place is buzzing with energy. Jaseo pumps a fist in the air, feeling pretty good about himself. At this rate, he can spend a whole month just eating and relaxing without having to lift a finger in a real fight. He passes by other groups of martial artists, many of whom are laughing and boasting about their own skills. They look confident, but Jaseo knows half of them are probably faking it too. He notices that more and more high-level individuals are continuing to arrive at the fort. It's a bit concerning, but he tells himself it's none of his business as long as they stay out of his way. He turns away from the main crowd, preferring the quieter parts of the fortress grounds where he can actually think. His goal is simple: stay invisible and stay fed. A small, satisfied smile plays on his lips as he walks. He's already dreaming about what kind of delicious food they're going to serve for lunch today. He starts humming a little tune to himself, completely relaxed as he strolls through a quiet courtyard. A nice bowl of hot meat soup would be just the thing to hit the spot. A sudden breeze kicks up, carrying a flurry of green leaves across the bright blue sky. The atmosphere is peaceful, but Yaseo's sharp senses pick up something out of the ordinary. He stops in his tracks, his eyes darting around as he catches a sweet, floral fragrance in the air. It's strong enough to cut through the usual smell of dust and sweat in the fortress. He rounds a corner and finds himself face to face with a young woman in vibrant yellow and green robes. She has bright red hair tied up in buns and eyes that look like they could burn a hole right through him. Yaseo's jaw drops as he realizes he's accidentally wandered into a restricted area. The woman, Manhwa lady, is already looking at him with a mix of suspicion and annoyance. He quickly tries to recover, putting on his best, calm master face and offering a small, polite smile. He knows he needs to handle this carefully if he wants to leave without making a scene. He starts to apologize, backing away slowly as he explains that he was just walking mindlessly and didn't mean to intrude. Manhwa lady doesn't look like she's buying it for a second. Internally, he's screaming at himself for letting his guard down so easily. All he wants to do is turn around and run as fast as possible in the opposite direction. Manhwa lady remains silent, her red eyes locked onto his face with an intensity that makes his skin crawl. She seems to be measuring him up, trying to decide if he's a threat or just an idiot. Just as he thinks he might be in the clear, she calls out for him to wait. The sudden command stops him dead in his tracks, and he slowly turns back around with a bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. She asks him for his name, her expression softening just enough to be even more terrifying. Jaseo can feel the situation spiraling out of his control, and he's not sure how to fix it. He's already decided that based on his 25 years of experience, getting involved with this woman is a terrible idea. He absolutely cannot afford to stand out right now. She leans in close, her eyes wide with curiosity as she asks if he's one of the masters who came to apply for Fort Manryong. Her sudden enthusiasm is even more jarring than her earlier glare. She starts clapping her hands and cheering, looking genuinely impressed by the idea of him being some legendary master. Jaseo can only offer a weak, non-committal response as he tries to process what's happening. He maintains a strained smile, his mind racing as he tries to figure out a way to slip away before she asks him to demonstrate his skills. This is definitely not the quiet afternoon he had planned. Manhwa lady points at Jaseo and demands a spar, her expression determined. Jaseo stands frozen, his eyes widening in confusion at the sudden challenge. Yaseo's mind races as he stares at her, his internal monologue screaming about the absurdity of a spar. He didn't come here to actually fight, especially not a young lady in a garden. As he tries to shift his weight, his boot catches on a loose rock, sending a small puff of dust into the air. He fumbles for balance, his body jerking awkwardly as he tries not to fall flat on his face. He manages to stabilize himself in a wide, low stance, his hands held out as if preparing for a technical exchange. His expression remains stoic, though his heart is pounding against his ribs. Manhwa lady's eyes light up with a fierce, predatory gleam as she interprets his stumble as a masterful preparation. She praises his willingness to engage, labeling him a real man for not running away like the others. Yaseo's composure cracks as he opens his mouth to protest, a bead of sweat tracing a line down his pale cheek. He tries to explain that it's all a misunderstanding, his hands trembling slightly in front of him. He pleads with her, addressing her as young lady, and insisting that this situation puts him in a very difficult position. He's desperately searching for an exit strategy that doesn't involve being pummeled. His internal thoughts spiral, worrying about what might happen if she actually attacks with those small, seemingly delicate hands. He's more afraid of the consequences of the fight than the fight itself. Ignoring his pleas, Manhwa lady gathers her strength, her body tensing as she prepares to strike. She declares that she won't yield the initiative, her red eyes burning with competitive spirit. A visible aura of purple energy begins to swirl around her outstretched hand, signaling the use of high-level internal arts. Jaseo watches in horror, recognizing the unmistakable signs of inner chi being channeled against him. She lunges forward with a powerful palm strike, the impact creating a massive shockwave that rattles the surrounding stone tiles. Jaseo is caught right in the center of the blast, his body absorbing the brunt of the energy. His teeth are gritted so hard his jaw aches, and a thin trail of saliva escapes his mouth as he fights to stay upright. The world spins around him, but he forces himself to remain conscious through sheer desperation. The force of the blow sends Jaseo sliding backward across the courtyard, his boots leaving dark streaks on the pavement. A cloud of dust and debris kicked up by the impact slowly settles between the two combatants. Jaseo hunches over, clutching his chest where the strike landed, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He's barely holding it together, his body screaming in protest after taking such a direct hit. He realizes with a sinking feeling that the small amount of inner chi he had managed to gather is already completely gone. He's now completely defenseless, having used everything just to survive that one attack. Manhwa Lady stands several paces away, her hand still extended as she stares at him in utter disbelief. She hadn't expected him to be standing at all, let alone seemingly unfazed. A close-up of her face reveals her shock, her eyes wide as she processed the fact that he took her full-strength palm strike. To her, this is proof that he's a far greater master than she initially suspected. They lock eyes across the clearing, both of them reeling from the exchange for very different reasons. Jaseo is terrified of what comes next, while Manhwa Lady is overcome with newfound respect. A large speech bubble emphasizes her internal realization. She is convinced that the man standing before her is a real master of the martial arts. Jaseo turns his back to her and starts to walk away, his head bowed as he tries to maintain an air of dignified indifference. In reality, he's just trying to find a place to collapse in private. His face is a mask of exhaustion and irritation as he trudges along, his ponytail swaying with each heavy step. He's done with gardens and mysterious ladies for the day. His internal voice is a frantic mess, urging him to slip away as naturally as possible before the adrenaline wears off and he actually dies. He's already planning his escape from the fortress entirely. Suddenly, two thick streams of blood erupt from his nostrils, staining his lips and chin bright red. He stares blankly ahead, the physical toll of the palm strike finally manifesting in the most embarrassing way possible. Manhwa Lady pumps her fists in the air, her face lit up with a triumphant, joyful grin. She cheers, satisfied that even a master like him couldn't completely withstand her unique Manhwa palm art. Jaseo quickly covers his nose with his hand, trying to hide the mess while stammering out a hollow compliment about her skill. He calls it an admirable and powerful technique, hoping flattery will buy him a quick exit. A tiny, panicked version of Yaseo's head floats in the corner of the frame, his eyes wide as he realizes he needs to praise her and then find some medicine. He's desperate for a tenfold supreme tonic to fix the damage. She reaches out and offers him a handful of white cotton wadding to plug the bleeding, her expression surprisingly helpful. Jaseo stares at the cotton, wondering why on earth she carries that around with her. She beams with pride, explaining that her Manhwa palm art is specifically designed to cause nosebleeds in everyone it hits. She stands tall, hands on her hips, convinced she's developed a truly revolutionary martial art. Yaseo's face contorts in a silent scream of frustration, his eyes bulging as he reflects on the absurdity of a martial art that only causes nosebleeds. He curses his luck for crossing paths with such a dangerous and strange woman. Manhwa Lady tilts her head, her gaze narrowing slightly as she asks him why he's acting so strangely. The brief moment of camaraderie is replaced by her natural suspicion once again. Her eyes light up again as she notices the sword strapped to his hip, clapping her hands together in excitement. She deduces that he must be a swordsman, which opens up a whole new realm of possibilities for her. Jaseo keeps his hand clamped firmly over his nose, a single drop of sweat rolling down his forehead as he tries to ignore her. He really just wants to go home. She leans in close, her red eyes glowing with an intense, manic energy as she promises to go get her own sword. She's already planning their next spar, this time using her Manhwa sword art. Later, back in the relative safety of the barracks, Jaseo sighs and rubs his forehead, the memory of the encounter still fresh. The mention of a sword art spar has him feeling even more exhausted than before. He lets out another silent, internal scream, his face twisted in a mask of pure agony and regret. He's convinced he messed with the absolutely wrong person, and there's no turning back now. He sits quietly at a wooden table in the dim light of the room, slowly drawing his sword from its scabbard. He's focused and methodical, a stark contrast to his earlier panic. Using a white cloth, he begins to carefully wipe down the length of the blade, his eyes fixed on the cold steel. It's a repetitive, calming motion that helps him regain his composure. He tells himself that simply by properly caring for his weapon, he can project the aura of a true master to those around him. It's another layer of the bluff he's forced to maintain. A close-up shows his hand gripped tightly around the hilt as he finishes the polishing, his knuckles slightly white. The sword reflects the soft light filtering through the room's paper screens. The blade gleams with a sharp, silver light, and for a moment, his own determined eye is reflected in the polished surface. He looks every bit the master he's pretending to be. From across the room, Sim Jeol and So Gukai watch him with genuine admiration, their expressions full of respect. They comment on how he truly seems to be on a different level compared to the other recruits. Jaseo continues his work without looking up, his movements fluid and reverent as he polishes the steel. To his companions, he looks like an artist totally absorbed in his craft, unaware of the audience he's captivated. Heo Jaseo looks down at his sword with a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. He reflects on how such skilled hands are never the result of mere chance. He credits his dexterity to the decade he spent working in various inns. It was a humble beginning that shaped the foundation of his current expertise. In the quiet of the barracks, he sits cross-legged on the floor, meticulously polishing a blade. He recalls the countless hours spent cleaning the weapons of drifters and wandering swordsmen who passed through those inns. With a smooth, practiced motion, he stands and slides the sword back into its dark scabbard. The soft metallic click echoes slightly in the sparsely furnished room. He strikes a dramatic pose, holding the sword aloft as if ready for a formal duel. He remembers the old man's advice to live as a low-tier martial artist for the sake of chivalry, a directive he finds increasingly ironic. The gleaming tip of the blade points toward the floorboards, reflecting the soft light of the room. He moves with a calculated grace that masks his inner turmoil. He executes a swift flourish, the blade tracing a broad silver arc through the air. Despite his self-identification as truly low-tier, his movements are deceptively fluid. A close-up captures the ornate carvings on the sword's crossguard as it catches the light. He knows that looking like a master is a necessity, not a choice. He sheathes the weapon with a sharp, decisive action, his expression hardening into a mask of focus. For him, the performance of mastery is a survival tactic. Sim Jeol and So Gukai watch from the sidelines, their eyes wide with genuine awe at his display. Sim Jeol remarks that the sword seems to be a natural extension of his very being. Heo Jaseo offers a modest, polite smile as he turns to acknowledge their praise. He plays along, claiming that the weapon has indeed become a part of his body through years of dedication. Outside, the sun shines brightly over the fortress rooftops, while the sound of clashing steel drifts through the air. A crowd has gathered in the courtyard below, drawn by the commotion of an early conflict. So Gukai bursts into the room, his face flushed with excitement as he announces that the drifters have already started fighting. Sim Jeol remains seated, seemingly unsurprised by the news. Sim Jeol leans back at the table, dismissing the brawlers as low-tier martial artists who lack even the basic patience to wait for the tournament. Heo Jaseo sits beside him, maintaining his air of detached calm. So Gukai leans in, his eyes gleaming as he mentions that some of the participants are actually quite famous. He suggests they go and take a look, hopping to break the boredom of the afternoon. Sim Jeol remains unmoved, questioning why they should bother with such a petty display that doesn't concern them. Both he and Heo Jaseo stay firmly in their seats, their backs to their excited companion. So Gukai's expression becomes more intense as he names the fighters, the poison wolf Yibu and the thin-face sword. These are names that carry a significant weight in the martial world. The names hit home instantly, causing both Heo Jaseo and Sim Jeol to whip around in their seats. Their initial indifference vanishes, replaced by a sudden, sharp interest in the unfolding chaos. A massive crowd gathers in the fortress courtyard, forming a wide ring around two impending combatants. The air is thick with anticipation as everyone waits for the duel between the well-known drifter martial artists to begin. Within the throng of spectators, a mysterious figure in a dark cloak adjusts his hood. He remains silent, his focused gaze fixed on the center of the ring where the fight is about to unfold. So Gukai notes the growing excitement, commenting on the rumors surrounding the two skilled fighters. Standing beside him, Heo Jaseo and Sim Jeol watch the spectacle, taking in the intense atmosphere of the gathering. Poison Wolf Yibu takes his stance in the center of the arena, his heavy, blood-stained cleaver resting in his hand. Chains rattle against his arm as he prepares for the initial clash. A close-up of Yibu reveals his cold, calculating gaze behind a single yellow-tinted lens. He grits his teeth, looking every bit the ruthless warrior his reputation suggests. Across from him, Thin-Face Sword offers a cocky smirk, clearly unfazed by his opponent's imposing presence. He rests a hand on his hilt, ready to utilize his agile and refined style. Thin-faced sword moves first, lunging forward with a speed that blurs his form against the stone tiles. He keeps low to the ground, aiming to end the duel with a single, precise strike. His blade cuts through the air with a sharp whistle, leaving a trail of light in its wake. The sheer velocity of the swing highlights his mastery of the quick-draw technique. The two drifters clash in the center of the courtyard, sparks flying as steel meets heavy iron. Thin-faced sword maintains a relentless pace, testing his opponent's defenses with a flurry of agile movements. Yibu tightens his grip on the handle of his massive cleaver, weathering the storm of quick strikes. He waits for the perfect moment to deliver a counterattack that will end the fight in one blow. The heavy weapon crashes into the ground with explosive force, shattering the stone tiles and sending debris flying. Despite the missed connection, the sheer power behind the swing is enough to make the crowd gasp. Yibu follows up with another powerful horizontal sweep, forcing his opponent to stay on the defensive. He swings the massive blade as if it were weightless, showing off his immense physical strength. Back in the crowd, Sogukai turns to Sim-jeol, curious about his assessment of the two fighters. They both lean in, eager to hear which of the drifters has the better chance of winning. Sim-jeol studies the combatants intently, his eyes following every movement. He notes that in terms of pure technique, Thin-faced sword is clearly the more skilled of the two. He figures that the longer the duel drags on, the more it will favor the man with the superior swordsmanship. It seems like a logical conclusion given the current flow of the battle. However, Heo Jaseo interjects with a different perspective, stating that the advantage actually lies with Poison Wolf Yibu. His roommates look at him with surprise, taken aback by his unexpected prediction. Sim-jeol is skeptical, arguing that the swordsman seems to have much stronger inner energy. He finds it hard to believe that raw power could overcome such a clear technical gap. Jaseo simply offers a confident smirk, telling them they'll know the answer soon enough. He advises them to keep watching as the duel enters its final stage. The trio focuses their attention back on the arena, watching as the two martial artists continue their high-stakes dance. The crowd's cheers grow louder as the outcome of the fight remains uncertain. Thin-faced sword is clearly starting to struggle, sweat pouring down his face as his movements lose their initial sharpness. His ragged breathing indicates that his stamina is reaching its breaking point. Yibu's relentless pressure finally pays off, his massive cleaver slamming against the swordsman's blade and pushing it back. The raw weight of the weapon is starting to overwhelm the more agile fighter's defenses. Exhausted and unable to maintain his pace, the swordsman is forced into a desperate retreat. For some reason, despite his technical skill, he simply can't find a way to turn the tide. Sim-jeol is stunned, realizing that Jaseo's prediction was spot on. He watches in awe as the underdog begins to secure a decisive victory over the more refined swordsman. When asked how he could have known, Jaseo plays it off with a dismissive comment about low-tier fights. His roommates are left even more convinced of his status as a legendary master. Jaseo's calm expression suddenly vanishes as he spots a familiar, bright red head in the crowd. His eyes narrow in recognition, and a sense of impending dread begins to take hold. He looks over his shoulder, confirming his fears as the Xianhua lady stands just a few feet away. She's staring right back at him, a look of shocked realization on her face. Recognition hits her like a bolt of lightning, and she points a finger directly at him with a loud shout. She recognizes him as the hero from the garden, and she's not about to let him hide in the crowd. Jaseo's face twists in pure horror as she publicly identifies him as the Great Twin Nosebleeds hero. His carefully constructed reputation as a grandmaster is now under immediate threat of becoming a complete laughingstock. Heo Jaseo stands there, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He's trying to keep his cool while his reputation precedes him. Hwa isn't letting him off that easily, calling him out for having no pride. Behind him, the others just watch the awkward exchange. She boasts about her flower palm technique, claiming no one has ever walked away from it unscathed. She even uses that embarrassing nickname, calling him the Great Twin Nosebleeds hero. She holds out her hand, emphasizing the power of her strike. To her, the fact that he's still standing is proof that he's a master whose skill matches her eye's judgment. Heo Jaseo looks away, probably wishing he hadn't escaped the previous day only to run straight back into her. The surrounding crowd is starting to take notice of their conversation. He sighs internally, realizing he's caught in a loop. He's got to maintain this great hero, facade even though he's just barely hanging on. He puts on a bright, fake smile and starts laying it on thick. He calls her technique one of the most impressive things he's seen in years. Hopping a little flattery will buy him an exit. He gives her some cliché advice about training harder and walks away before she can ask for a rematch. He's sweating bullets trying to end this interaction. Suddenly, the clashing sounds from the duel drew everyone's attention. So Gukai pointed, clearly shocked to see a veteran like Thin-Face Sword being handled like a total novice. The one-eyed man, Poison Wolf Yibu, lunges forward with a massive blade. He's out for blood, and he isn't holding anything back. Thin-Face Sword is already bleeding out, but keeps a crazed grin on his face. He's not ready to accept defeat, even as the situation turns lethal. Sim Jiol and So Gukai look on with concern, realizing this has turned into a fight to the death. The crowd is too intimidated to intervene. A blade cuts deep, and blood sprays across the stone floor. It's a brutal display of martial arts without any of the honor. Sim Jiol crosses his arms, shaking his head at the lack of true masters around to stop the carnage. He knows if nobody steps in, only one man is leaving that circle alive. Poison Wolf Yibu screams in a frenzy, ready to end the rivalry once and for all. He's completely lost to the bloodlust of the duel. His opponent matches his energy, shouting that they'll just have to die together. Neither man is willing to back down. Heo Jaseo steps back into the frame, looking down at Hwa with a stern expression. He tells her to step aside, finally dropping the overly polite act. She doesn't move, still rambling about how he disappeared so suddenly the day before. Meanwhile, a suspicious figure in black lurks in the background. Hwa is all smiles, eager to talk shop about swords. She's completely oblivious to the assassin behind her aiming a hidden weapon. Heo Jaseo is more confused by her enthusiasm than anything else. He's trying to process her hero worship while sensing something is off. The assassin lets fly a hidden projectile, a lethal dagger aimed straight at them. It cuts through the air with terrifying speed. Heo Jaseo spots the weapon at the last second, his eyes widening in alarm. He realizes this isn't part of the street fight. He moves with incredible speed, his hand already reaching for his blade. He's forced to drop the act and actually use the skills he's been pretending to have. He shouts a warning to Hwa as the projectiles whistle toward her. The air around the daggers hums with concentrated energy. Hwa is stunned by his reaction time, thinking he's answering her request for a discussion with direct action. She's still misinterpreting everything as a sign of his greatness. The projectile flew in at a deadly speed, but Jaseo had already anticipated its trajectory and intercepted it with a swift strike of his sword. But he never expected that, while fending off the hidden weapon, he would accidentally elbow Hwa in the face, sending her flying from the impact. Worse still, Jaseo couldn't fully deflect the projectile, causing it to ricochet into the air. A camera angle reveals that the situation is slipping out of Yaseo's control. Hwa is down with a bloody nose, while the hidden weapon continues to spiral through the air. Even worse, he realized that the inner energy infused in the hidden weapon made it impossible for him to regain his balance, leaving him stumbling and on the verge of collapsing. In a desperate attempt to regain his footing, some stroke of pure luck led Yaseo's sword to accidentally intercept both weapons of the dueling masters. A deafening metallic clash rang out across the courtyard. Both Poison Wolf Yibu and Thin-Face Sword stopped their duel, completely shocked by the sudden interference. They weren't expecting anyone to jump into their death match. In a wide shot, Heo Jaseo stands tall between the two bloody combatants, his sword drawn. Hwa lies on the ground behind him, safe but shaken. The entire crowd goes silent, eyes wide as they take in the scene. Nobody expected the hero to actually step into the middle of such a mess. Sim Jiol and So Gukai are just as stunned as everyone else. They can't believe he's actually putting his life on the line to stop the fight. Heo Jaseo projects an intense aura, even as he's internally reeling from the shock of the situation. He's completely locked into the role now, like it or not. He holds his ground, blocking both sides with a single, fluid movement. The energy from his intervention sends ripples through the air. He remains focused, his eyes darting between his two opponents to make sure neither of them makes a move. He's the only thing standing between them and certain death. Poison Wolf Yibu and Thin-Face Sword stare him down, their own weapons lowered in confusion. The sudden shift in power has completely derailed their duel. The onlookers start whispering and shouting, realizing that the great twin nosebleeds hero just made his move. His reputation is reaching a whole new level. One of the hidden daggers clatters to the floor, its energy finally spent. It's a silent reminder of the assassination attempt that just failed. Back in the shadows, the masked assassin clicks his tongue in annoyance. Seeing that his mission has failed, he prepares to retreat back into the darkness. The blades clash with a violent ring, blue energy spiraling out from the point of impact. Heo Jaseo looks on in pure panic, feeling the raw pressure of the clashing inner energies surging right toward him. His hand trembles as he grips his own hilt, realizing he can't hold back the tide of power much longer. Poison Wolf Yibu is beyond reason, declaring that he'll burn the rest of his inner energy just to take his rival down. Heo Jaseo screams for them to stop, knowing that kind of desperate move is going to end in a disaster for everyone. Thin Face Sword doesn't care, goading his opponent to bring everything he's got with a crazed, defiant grin. Both men let out a blood-curdling roar as they prepare to release their final, most destructive attacks. Heo Jaseo loses it, cursing his terrible luck as he realizes he's stuck right in the center of their mutual suicide pact. He wonders how his simple plan for a free meal ever spiraled into this life-or-death nightmare. A blinding pillar of blue light erupts into the night sky, marking the release of a massive amount of power. The onlookers are absolutely floored, convinced they're witnessing a true master manifesting legendary sword chi. Heo Jaseo is actually holding them both apart, his sword catching both of their massive blades in a desperate display of suppression. But up close, his eyes are wide with a different kind of horror. This wasn't some grand master move. The resulting backlash is massive, an explosion of pure energy that tosses both duelists back like ragdolls. Heo Jaseo is caught right in the blast radius, his own scream lost in the deafening sound of the discharge. His sword is ripped from his grip, spinning uselessly through the air as the dust begins to settle. At that very moment, the assassin struck again, launching another dagger towards Hwa. Hwa freezes as she realizes a dagger, glowing with vibrant pink chi, is flying straight toward her. She looks back, terror etched on her face as the projectile comes closer. A sword flashes through the air, intercepting the hidden weapon just inches away from her face. The courtyard is a mess of broken stone and fallen bodies, with both duelists and Heo Jaseo sprawled out on the ground. Yaseo's sword is still spinning through the air after having just intercepted the hidden weapon. Hwa's eyes widen in horror as she looks at her savior, finally realizing how close she came to death. The surrounding crowd is equally stunned, their eyes glued to the wooden pillar where the assassin's dagger is embedded. So Gukai looks at the scene in awe, convinced that Brother Heo just saved the day with a master-level technique. Simjeol is equally impressed, nodding that it took incredible skill to suppress those two and block a hidden weapon at the same time. Later, Heo Jaseo lies unconscious in a guest room, his face pale as the others wonder about his true identity. Simjeol and So Gukai stand over him, their respect for the man growing as they discuss his heroic intervention. Heo Jaseo's eyes flutter open, his heart sinking as he listens to them talk about his supposedly master-level performance. So Gukai notices him stirring and leans in close, relieved that their resident hero is finally coming to. Internally, Heo Jaseo is kicking himself, mortified that he actually fainted from the strain and looked like a weakling. He clutches the sheets, desperately trying to think of a cool excuse that isn't just that he got scared and his body gave out. He sits up and rubs his head, seriously considering just sneaking out the window before things get even weirder. So Gukai is practically beaming with admiration, telling him how deeply moved he was by his selfless actions. He praises him for throwing himself into the crossfire without a moment's hesitation to save those two idiots from killing each other. The memories of the chaotic fight come rushing back to Heo Jaseo, and he realizes he's in way over his head. He realizes his low-profile life is officially over, and the situation has become a total, irreparable mess. He sits on the edge of the bed, dejected that he let his emotions drag him into a fight he had no business being in. So Gukai leans in and whispers that the entire fort is already gossiping about his incredible, heroic feat. He drops the biggest bombshell yet. Apparently, one of the people he saved was actually the Lord's daughter. Heo Jaseo stares back in complete shock, having no memory of ever meeting, let alone saving, anyone like that. A sharp knock at the door interrupts his internal crisis, and the group turns to see who it is. Hwa bursts in with her usual boundless energy, cheering for her favorite Great Twin Nosebleeds hero. Heo Jaseo stares at her with a dead-eyed expression, wondering why this kid is back to haunt him once again. Mok Igun scolds Hwa for her lack of manners, reminding her that Heo Jaseo is her benefactor. Hwa pouts and squishes her cheeks, claiming she was only teasing because Heo Jaseo feels like a familiar older brother to her. Standing tall in his ornate robes, Mok Igun introduces himself as the Lord of Manryong Fort and expresses his gratitude. Heo Jaseo is internally reeling, his eyes wide with shock at the realization that the troublesome girl is actually the Lord's daughter. Putting on a humble front, Heo Jaseo clasps his hands and bows slightly, dismissing his actions as mere coincidence. A sharp, calculative glint appears in Heo Jaseo's eyes as he realizes the sheer magnitude of the opportunity presented to him. He quickly weighs his options, wondering if he should just ask for a straightforward cash reward for his services. With a sly, hidden grin, he decides that asking for money would be too transparent and aims for something more valuable. Wide shot of the room where Sim Jeol and So Gukai stand by as Mok Igun offers a reward to Heo Jaseo, asking if money is what he desires. Heo Jaseo places a hand over his heart and bows his head, acting the part of a selfless warrior who doesn't care for wealth. Mok Igun is visibly surprised by the refusal and offers an official position as a warrior within the fort instead. Maintaining his facade, Heo Jaseo claims that his warrior's pride wouldn't allow him to accept such an easy advancement. Internally, he's in a cold sweat, knowing he's far too inexperienced to actually hold a position as an official warrior. Mok Igun strokes his mustache, impressed, and suggests that Heo Jaseo might prefer acting as an instructor for new recruits. Heo Jaseo continues to play the humble hermit, arguing that someone who still has much to learn has no business teaching others. He's secretly impressed with himself, noticing how easily the lies and humble excuses are flowing from his mouth. Mok Igun proposes another option, becoming his daughter's bodyguard, nodding that a master of his caliber shouldn't hide. So Gukai steps forward with a wide grin, mentioning that Heo Jaseo's reputation has already taken the fort by storm. He explains how the news of a master among the drifters has sent the morale of the common folk soaring to new heights. With a confident thumbs up, So Gukai admits to having played a part in spreading the rumors himself. Heo Jaseo's facade nearly cracks as he screams internally at So Gukai for putting a target on his back. He gazes downward with a look of pure dread, imagining all the dangerous thugs who will now come looking for a fight. Desperate to escape the situation, he decides he'll just take a medicinal pill as a reward and disappear as fast as possible. He bows formally to the Lord, declining the bodyguard offer by claiming he has a different destiny to fulfill. Mok Igun looks on thoughtfully, promising to grant any reasonable request Heo Jaseo might have in mind. Heo Jaseo prepares to make his move, his expression becoming serious as he gets ready to ask for his prize. A faint, hopeful smile touches his lips as he begins to request a small medicinal elixir to boost his strength. Sion Hwa suddenly leaps onto her father's back, cutting off Heo Jaseo mid-sentence as Mok Igun tries to maintain order. Mok Igun looks at him with a piercing, somewhat skeptical gaze, repeating the word elixir with a strange tone. He asks if Heo Jaseo is truly one of those pathetic swordsmen who rely on drugs rather than hard work to grow stronger. Heo Jaseo freezes, his pupils shrinking in shock as he realizes he's accidentally walked into a major social faux pas. Sim Jeol and the others look on with judging or expectant expressions as Heo Jaseo struggles to explain his request. Heo Jaseo remains motionless, his mind racing to find a way out of the hole he's just dug for himself. He quickly clears his throat and shifts his stance, frantically pivoting the conversation toward the injured duelists. With a look of fake concern, he clenches his fist and suggests that an elixir should be used to treat the wounded men instead. Mok Igun and the others are caught off guard by this sudden display of benevolence, their expressions turning to confusion. Heo Jaseo gestures with his hand, doubling down on his act by speaking about the long-term benefits for the fort. He passionately argues that showing mercy and healing the injured will help the Lord recruit even better talent in the future. Caught up in his own lie, he draws his wooden sword dramatically and proclaims that the fort will flourish under such leadership. Tears well up in his eyes as he screams internally, horrified that he's giving away his reward to a couple of strangers. Moved by the seemingly noble speech, Mok Igun places a hand over his heart, his expression softening with respect. He lets out a boisterous laugh, declaring his heart full and promising to follow through on Heo Jaseo's selfless suggestion. Mok Igun lets out another boisterous laugh, genuinely impressed by Heo Jaseo's seemingly noble and selfless heart. Heo Jaseo slumps his shoulders, his soul practically escaping through his mouth as he curses his own big mouth and the rumors now surrounding him. His ears perk up as Mok Igun insists that he cannot let a warrior of such caliber leave without some form of compensation. Spreading his arms wide with a grand gesture, the Lord of Manryong Fort promises to prepare a gift that will be worthy of Heo Jaseo's status. Mok Igun leans in slightly, his expression hardening into a stern but friendly look as he warns that he will take it as an insult if his friend refuses this gift. A cold sweat breaks out on Heo Jaseo's face, his eyes darting around as he realizes he's getting sucked into a situation he desperately wanted to avoid. Standing amidst his followers, Mok Igun repeats that his heart is truly full, looking down at the young swordsman with newfound respect. The Lord reaches deep into the folds of his ornate black and gold robes, searching for something hidden within. He pulls out a small, sharp needle resting on a white cloth and presents it to Heo Jaseo, asking if he recognizes the object. Heo Jaseo's eyes widen in recognition as he identifies it as a blood-soaked needle, a legendary secret weapon belonging to the Tang clan. A memory flashes through his mind, recalling a similar weapon used by an assassin named Gui Onsam back at an inn. Mok Igun holds the needle up to the light, nodding that only someone with exceptional knowledge and skill would be able to identify such a rare tool. An image of a past victim appears, revealing the terrifying power of the needle as it pierces through anyone like a cannonball once infused with chi. The needle is shown piercing through a master's defensive aura like a hot knife through butter, a testament to the Tang clan's lethal ingenuity. Twirling the needle between his fingers, Mok Igun explains that the weapon is useless to anyone who lacks sufficient internal strength to activate it. His expression turns grave as he notes that the Tang clan are his secret backers, meaning they would have absolutely no reason to target his daughter. The realization hits Heo Jaseo like a physical blow, his expression turning blank as the Lord suggests that the assassin's real target was actually him. Heo Jaseo immediately begins to panic, shaking his head and clutching his hair while insisting that he is far too insignificant to have enemies. He continues his frantic denial, claiming his only goal in life is to stay out of trouble and avoid picking fights with anyone at all costs. His gaze drops to the floor, his eyes narrowing as he realizes that the more he tries to untangle himself, the deeper he gets dragged into this conspiracy. Overwhelmed by the potential headache of the situation, Heo Jaseo clutches his head and lets out a weary groan, looking like he's about to faint. Mok Igun gives him a knowing smile and decides to end the conversation for now, realizing that he's placed too much burden on an injured man. Hwa pops her head back into the room with a cheerful grin, reminding her hero that his tournament matches begin tomorrow and he needs to sleep. Heo Jaseo plops down on his bed, the weight of his fake reputation finally catching up to him. He's safe in his room for now, but the walls of Fort Manryong are starting to feel a bit too thin. He sits there in silence, head bowed, as he processes everything that's happened. The bluff was supposed to be simple, but things are spiraling out of control faster than he can keep up with. His eyes go wide as the realization hits him like a freight train. The tournament matches start tomorrow, and he's definitely not ready for any real action. Outside, the sun is high over the grand rooftops of the fort. It's a beautiful day, but for a guy who's just faking his way through life, it looks like the beginning of a nightmare. He quickly grabs his sword, deciding that staying here is a one-way ticket to humiliation and death. He needs to vanish before anyone expects him to actually draw that blade. A bead of sweat rolls down his face as he plots his escape. It's a shame to leave without any reward, but his life is worth way more than a few coins. He tightens his grip on the hilt, heart racing as he prepares to make a run for it. One wrong move and his whole facade comes crashing down. Just as he's about to bolt, a loud yawn stops him in his tracks. So Gukai is already awake, stretching his arms and greeting Jaseo like they're old pals. Jaseo forced a calm expression, acting like he's just stepping out to enjoy the morning air. He tells the guy he's looking forward to the matches, even though he's actually looking for the nearest exit. He joins the crowd gathered around the match board, scanning the lists with desperate eyes. Everyone around him is buzzing with excitement for the upcoming fights. The other martial artists spot him immediately, whispering about the master who showed up yesterday. They think he's here to scope out the competition, which only adds to his stress. He lets out a massive sigh of relief when he sees his name isn't on the list for day 2. That means one more day of free meat soup and a little more time to plan his getaway. His celebration is cut short when he checks the day 3 roster. He points a finger at the board, his jaw dropping as he sees a very familiar name. Thin-Face Sword is on the list, and Jaseo recognizes the name instantly. This is getting way more complicated than he ever intended. He remembers the guy, a brutal fighter who took an axe to the shoulder and didn't even flinch. If that's the kind of person he's up against, he's in serious trouble. The thought of facing someone that terrifying has him grit his teeth in pure panic. He's just a guy who knows how to clean a sword, not a monster who can fight through lethal wounds. He overhears the crowd talking about the matchup, wondering if Thin-Face Sword will even show up after yesterday's injuries. Jaseo can only hope the guy stays in bed. He stares off into space, his mind racing through every possible worst-case scenario. One bad hit and his secret dies with him. He starts to worry that his own greed for a few free meals might end up costing him his life. He needs to find a way out, and he needs to find it now. Suddenly, the booming sound of a gong echoes through the courtyard, signaling an announcement. Everyone stops what they're doing and turns toward the stage. An official steps forward, shouting for everyone's attention. He's got an additional announcement for all the tournament participants. He bellows that regardless of whether they win or lose, every participant will receive 2 taels of silver. The crowd goes wild at the news. Jaseo's eyes light up as he does the math. 2 taels is enough to live like a king at a cheap inn for months. He can practically taste the luxury. His plan changes instantly. He'll wait until the match starts, forfeit immediately, and walk away with the cash. It's the perfect low-effort payday. Suddenly, he feels a presence behind him. A pair of eyes peeks over his shoulder, and a chill runs down his spine. He spins around to find Hwa hovering right behind him. She's grinning ear to ear, clearly happy to have found him again. "Great twin nosebleeds, hero," she shouts at the top of her lungs. Jaseo wishes the ground would just open up and swallow him whole. He literally starts to blur from the sheer shock and embarrassment of it all. His secret nickname is out, and there's no taking it back. He clutches his head in frustration, wondering why this girl keeps popping up at the worst possible moments. She's like a walking disaster for his reputation. Jaseo tries to make a quick getaway, but Hwa is right on his heels. Every step he takes, she takes one too, matching his pace perfectly. He stops and turns, asking her why she's following him. She just gives him a blank, innocent look, acting like she's just going her own way. He groans as she continues to trail him, her hands clasped casually behind her back. He can't get a moment of peace with her around. "Don't follow me," he warns, but it's clear his words are falling on deaf ears. She's way too interested in whatever he's doing. She leans in with a serious expression, warning him that he really shouldn't go that way. Jaseo, of course, isn't in the mood for her advice. He brushes her off with a sarcastic comment, confident that she can't stop him. He picks up the pace, determined to put some distance between them. As he walks away, he thinks about how his life just keeps getting more and more complicated whenever she's around. He just wanted a simple life, but that's clearly out of the question. Suddenly, he bumps right into someone. The impact stops him dead in his tracks, and he looks up to see who he's collided with. He freezes, a look of pure confusion and shock crossing his face. Whoever this person is, they've got his full attention. He stares up at a tall, stunning woman in elegant white and teal robes. She carries herself with an aura of cold discipline that's impossible to ignore. This is Do-yeon, known as the Ice Jade Ice Sword. She's Hwa's instructor, and she doesn't look particularly happy to see him. Jaseo screams internally, convinced that she's his new bad luck charm. He's already in over his head, and now he's literally run into a real master. He quickly clasps his hands in a respectful bow, stuttering out an apology. He makes up a frantic excuse about being chased by a ghost just to get away. Heo Jaseo quickly tries to explain himself, claiming he just took a wrong turn. He's doing his best to look like an innocent mistake-maker rather than a suspicious intruder. His eyes dart around nervously as he sticks to his story. He's already deep in his own lies, so what's one more little fabrication to save his skin? Then he sees her clearly, Do-yeon, the Ice Jade Ice Sword. She's so stunning it practically stops his heart, a true beauty that stands out even in this crowd of warriors. Hwa pops up behind her, grinning and teasing him for starring. She wonders if her instructor has something special on her face to attract such a long look. Jaseo snaps out of it, sweating as he curses his bad luck. Of all the people to run into while trying to sneak around, it had to be her. Do-yeon keeps her cool, informing him that this isn't exactly a public space. Still, she grants him permission to enter, looking down at him with those piercing eyes. Hwa immediately grabs his arm, telling him he can't just walk out whenever he feels like it. She's way too energetic for someone Jaseo is actively trying to avoid. Jaseo just stands there with a blank expression, wondering where on earth she learned to be so pushy. He's completely at the mercy of this red-haired whirlwind. Do-yeon quickly steps in, scolding Hwa to mind her manners. She's the picture of discipline compared to her chaotic student. She introduces herself formally as the instructor and mentions hearing about how Jaseo saved Hwa's life. It seems his accidental heroics from earlier have already made the rounds. Jaseo plays it off with a humble laugh, saying anyone would have done the same. He's bowing and scraping, trying to maintain the noble master facade while internally screaming. Do-yeon's hand rests on her sword as she explains that even benefactors have to follow the rules of the fort. She isn't about to let him off the hook just because he's a hero. Jaseo pleads for her to just let him go, insisting he truly didn't know where he was going. He's practically begging at this point, but she's not budging. Hwa throws a fit, shouting about how dozens of men try to sneak into her instructor's quarters every single day. Apparently, Do-yeon's beauty is a well-known problem. She warns that if they let him go easily, every man watching from the sidelines will try to rush the gates again. Jaseo realization is setting in. He's become a symbol for every hopeful suitor in the area. He looks around, sweating buckets as he realizes just how many eyes are actually on him. He's the center of attention in the worst way possible. The crowd is already whispering that even a master like Do-yeon wouldn't be a match for a young lord who can wield sword chi. They've built up his reputation into something truly monstrous. Jaseo's eyes are wide with terror as he listens to the rumors. He knows he can't do half the things they're saying, and the pressure is becoming unbearable. The name Ice Jade Ice Sword keeps ringing in his head. Just the title alone screams master level, and he's just a guy who spent 15 years doing laundry and cleaning blades. A bead of sweat trickles down his forehead. He knows he has to maintain the lie, or his life at the fort is effectively over. He decides that in a moment like this, he has to be even bolder to survive. He plants his foot firmly on the ground, preparing for a grand performance. He draws his sword with a flourish, shouting that in all his life, he has never once drawn his blade against a woman. It's a classic high-stakes bluff. He continues the act, declaring that even if she tries to take his life, his blade will remain exactly where it is. The onlookers are completely buying into his chivalrous display. Do-yeon's eye twitches in sheer annoyance. She can tell something is off, even if everyone else is swooning over his supposed noble heart. The men in the crowd nod in agreement, wondering how any man could point a sword at such a beauty. Some even say they'd rather be skewered by her themselves. While the crowd is distracted, Jaseo is internally screaming for someone, anyone, to say something to end this. Do-yeon just slowly starts to draw her own blade, her expression unreadable. He loses it and screams that he has absolutely no designs on Do-yeon whatsoever. He's trying to clear his name before he gets into a fight he can't possibly win. That statement only made things worse. Hwa turns to look at her beautiful master in shock as Jaseo continues his frantic denial. Do-yeon just stands there, her irritation radiating in waves. Jaseo raises a hand, making a dramatic vow. He's going all in on his innocent traveler act, no matter how ridiculous it sounds. He shouts that he'll cut off his own leg if he ever shows his face around her again. It's an extreme promise, even for a guy as desperate as he is. Do-yeon's eyes narrow as she stares directly at his leg. But Jaseo still hasn't realized that his words have genuinely infuriated her. She takes a slow step forward, her hand tightening on the hilt of her sword. The air around them seems to grow cold as she prepares to move. Jaseo panics, realizing she's actually staring right at his leg like she's about to fulfill his vow for him. He's definitely said too much this time. He doubles down on his apology, shouting that he really just wandered in without thinking. He's practically vibrating with fear as she approaches. He clutches his chest, swearing on his life that he has zero interest in her. It's a desperate attempt to save his limbs and his dignity all at once. With a sharp click, Do-yeon draws her sword just an inch from its scabbard. The sound is like a death knell in the quiet courtyard. She looks at him with cold, calculating eyes and asks if his words are sincere. Jaseo's life is hanging by a thread, and his next answer is everything. Namgung-wal doesn't hesitate, swinging her blade in a blinding arc that cuts through the air right in front of the guy. Heo Jaseo stands frozen as the cold steel whistles past his face, the force of the swing nearly knocking him back. She suddenly stops and pulls her sword back, looking surprisingly calm as she notes that his resolve seems genuine. Jaseo is sweating bullets, staring at the sharp edge just inches from his throat while his heart tries to jump out of his chest. She finally sheathes her weapon and turns her back, deciding to take him at his word for once. The guy is internally screaming about how he almost died, though he can't help thinking that going out at the hands of a beauty wouldn't have been the worst way to go. Wal starts walking away, mentioning that she'll respect his wishes for now, even if she has her own rules to follow. She glances back over her shoulder, suggesting they settle their business during the official tournament instead. Jaseo wastes zero time heading the other way, eager to put as much distance as possible between himself and that woman. All he can think about right now is finding a hot bowl of meat soup and a bed that isn't made of dirt. He sighs to himself, realizing that a grand reputation is pretty much worthless if you're 6 feet under. He mutters under his breath about how it's finally time to drop this act and get the hell out of here. Suddenly, his entourage started yelling from the sidelines, completely misreading the situation as usual. The mustachioed guy is practically moved to tears, convinced that Jaseo is leaving just to avoid being a burden to the lady. Jaseo doesn't even bother looking back, trudging along, convinced that CNHWA must have cursed him with eternal bad luck. He trudges through the training grounds alone, the wind blowing leaves past him as he plans his escape. He's worried he's getting way too involved in things that might actually reveal his true identity. He hangs his head, seriously considering if it's better to just disappear back into the mountains and train in peace. His thoughts are interrupted when he notices someone training nearby, looking like they're struggling. It's Sim Jeol, and he's swinging a massive blade with everything he's got, sweat flying everywhere. Sim's feet stomp heavily into the dirt, kicking up dust with every clumsy, forceful step he takes. The heavy weapon trails through the air as the muscular warrior tries to force a move that clearly isn't clicking. Watching from the shadows, Jaseo notes that the guy's form is a mess, like he learned it straight from a cheap book. Sim pauses his training, finally noticing that someone has been watching his terrible performance. He rests the massive sword on his shoulder and calls out, saying he's been looking for Brother Heo all morning. Jaseo plays it cool, claiming he was just walking a lap to clear out some excess energy while he's wandering. Sim gets a serious look on his face, dropping the friendly act to ask for a huge favor. The guy actually swallows his pride and asks if Jaseo has any pointers for his technique. Jaseo is internally baffled that anyone would want advice from a low-tier nobody like him. He tries to dodge the request, pointing out that he's a swordsman and doesn't really know the first thing about greatswords. Sim Jeol isn't taking no for an answer, begging for just a single word of guidance from a supposed master. He clenches his pants in frustration, venting about how he trains until he's raw but still feels like he's hitting a wall. He slumps over, looking completely defeated while his giant sword leans against the ground next to him. The big guy stares at the dirt, wondering why he's not getting any better despite all the effort. Jaseo finally speaks up, asking Sim if he's ever wondered why he gets winded after only a few swings. Sim figures it must be a lack of stamina, or that his style relies way too much on brute strength. Jaseo just shakes his head, telling him flat out that he's wrong. He leans in close and asks if the guy actually bought a manual and taught himself everything he knows. Sim's eyes go wide in shock, stammering as he asks how Jaseo could possibly have known that. Jaseo just puts on a smug grin, internally laughing that he caught the guy pretending to be a direct disciple. He gives Sim a reassuring pat, promising that he won't breathe a word about the guy's little secret to anyone else. Sim Jeol looks like he just saw a miracle, bowing his head as he thanks him profusely for the mercy. Jaseo advises Sim to stop worrying about his feet for a second, pointing out that learning from a book usually makes people lose their flow mid-move. He suggests just letting the steps follow the natural path of the heavy blade, and to ditch those useless books for good. Sim Jeol takes the advice to heart, closing his eyes and repeating the idea of riding the weapon's flow like a mantra. Suddenly, his eyes snap open, filled with a new kind of clarity as the gears finally start to turn in his head. Sim lets out a shout of realization, thanking Brother Heo for pointing out that he's been way too fixated on raw power this whole time. He starts a fresh swing, the massive blade whistling through the air with a newfound fluidness that wasn't there before. The weapon creates its own powerful current as it cuts a wide, shimmering arc through the dusty air of the courtyard. His legs naturally follow the momentum, his footsteps light and synchronized with the heavy weight of the blade for the first time. The ground practically explodes with force as the strike connects, sending out a shockwave that rattles the nearby buildings. Sim breaks into a huge, ecstatic grin, laughing as he realizes he's never felt his technique flow this perfectly in his entire life. So Gukai points at the scene in total shock, yelling that Sim's entire axe form has completely transformed in just a few minutes. Sim claps Jaseo on the shoulder, loudly crediting him for giving the true guidance that finally fixed his broken form. The bald guy is practically vibrating with excitement, calling this a once-in-a-lifetime, fortuitous encounter for his friend. Other martial artists nearby start pausing their own practice, whispering about the miracle they just witnessed in the training grounds. Word spreads fast as the other martial artists look on with pure jealousy, all wishing they could get a secret tip from the mysterious master. Jaseo looks like he wants to melt into the floor, realizing that the bald idiot is drawing way more unwanted attention to them again. So Gukai chases after him, shouting at the top of his lungs and asking where his new favorite master is headed in such a hurry. A high-angle shot shows two fighters clashing on a wooden stage, while a small crowd of spectators watches from the sidelines. Sim-Jeol is back in the ring, putting his new moves to the test by burying his heavy blade into the wooden floor of the arena. Jaseo is watching from the edge of the stage, sweating and puffing his cheeks out as he tries to get his nerves under control. He wonders to himself if winning this match would actually make people treat him like some high-ranking township officer. He scans the area, guessing that any real masters are probably busy fighting in the main arenas far away from this minor stage. A helpful diagram pops up, explaining that the hierarchy in Manryung Fort goes all the way from squad members up to the fortress lord. A hand raises a dark flag against the bright blue sky, officially marking the end of the current bout. Sim-Jeol stands over his defeated opponent, looking triumphant as he looms over the guy he just flattened on the stage. He hoists his heavy sword high above his head, soaking in the cheers while Jaseo watches him from the back of the crowd. Jaseo is actually relieved that the reaction is so quiet, thinking it'll be a lot easier to forfeit and slip away if nobody is paying attention. So Gukai congratulates his friend, but Sim dismisses the praise, saying it's kind of silly to celebrate beating some low-tier drifter. The big guy makes sure everyone within earshot knows that his victory is entirely thanks to the guidance of Brother Heo. Jaseo gives a half-hearted wave and some generic congratulations, looking like he's already halfway out the door. He figures he'll just go up, lose quickly while it's still quiet, and then finally get the hell out of this fortress for good. His plan for a quiet exit is looking better by the second, at least until he realizes someone is approaching him from the side. He turns his head with a confused look as a familiar figure stops right in front of him. Thin-Faced Sword gives a respectful bow and thanks the young master for everything he's done. The teal-haired warrior mentions that he healed up incredibly fast thanks to the elixir Jaseo gave him earlier. Jaseo is visibly embarrassed by the public display of gratitude, his face turning a little red as people start to stare. He stammers through a response, saying he's just glad the medicine actually worked as intended. Thin-Faced Sword gets a determined look, swearing that he won't bring any shame to Jaseo's name in their upcoming match. He shouts with pure passion, vowing to fight with every fiber of his being to show how much he's progressed. He bows deeply once more, practically begging for another round of guidance from the man he now considers a mentor. Jaseo stands there like a statue, his mind completely blank as he realizes his plan to quietly forfeit is officially dead. The bald guy and the others are in total awe, unable to believe that even the proud, thin-faced Sword is bowing his head to Brother Heo. The crowd erupts into a chant, led by So Gukai, who pumps his fists in the air while shouting for Brother Heo to show them something amazing. Jaseo's eyes are wide with panic, a single bead of sweat rolling down his temple as he clenches his fist tight enough to shake. He glances toward the source of the noise, his gaze sharp and filled with a growing sense of dread. So Gukai gives a confident thumbs up, flashing a wide grin as he promises to handle all the cheering for his new idol. The entire courtyard starts picking up the rhythm, the name Heo Jaseo echoing off the walls while the bald man leads the charge with both arms raised. Jaseo's expression twists into a mask of pure rage, shadows flickering behind him as he internally debates whether he should just take out the bald idiot right then and there. On the stage, Thin-Faced Sword stands ready, gesturing politely for Jaseo to join him for their inevitable duel. Each footstep feels heavy as Jaseo begins the slow climb up the stairs, the sound of his boots echoing against the stone. He settles his nerves, a grim determination settling on his face as he admits to himself that there's no way he can forfeit with everyone watching like this. His boots hit the wooden planks of the arena floor with a solid thud, marking the start of a fight he never actually wanted to have. The Heaven-Earth Martial Arts arena is packed, and every spectator is on the edge of their seat. Heo Jaseo is standing there, sweating bullets because he thinks a head-on fight is his only option left. His opponent, Thin-Faced Sword, isn't wasting any time and draws his blade with serious intent. He challenges Jaseo to show him a move, and the tension in the air is thick. Jaseo is doing some quick mental math, remembering the insane footwork this guy showed in his previous matches. He knows he has to read those high-speed movements perfectly if he wants to survive this. Thin-Faced Sword starts things off, moving with the kind of speed that leaves regular martial artists in the dust. He lunges forward, practically begging Jaseo to give him a real challenge. His feet barely touch the boards as he blurs across the arena floor. Jaseo's heart is racing. The pressure is intense, and he's genuinely unsure if he can keep up. He decides to focus on the sound of the footsteps, trying to predict where the next strike will land. Suddenly, he catches a glimpse of the movement and realizes something is very different. Thin-Face's sword zips right past him, but to Jaseo, it feels like the guy is moving through molasses. He's completely baffled. There's no way a novice like him should be able to track a master this easily. Thin-Face's sword is just as shocked, wondering if his movements were actually read that easily. He tries to convince himself it's impossible. Even for someone of Jaseo's reputation, this shouldn't be that simple. But then he sees Jaseo standing there with his back turned, looking like he's not even paying attention. The lack of respect makes the swordsman grit his teeth in pure frustration. Even the crowd is starting to comment, noticing that Thin-Face's sword can't find a single opening. From their perspective, it looks like Jaseo is just standing there while his opponent struggles to keep up. Internally, Jaseo is still freaking out, wondering what the hell is happening to his perception. Everything is just too clear. It's like his eyes are working on a completely different level now. But then his heightened senses pick up something else, something dangerous lurking nearby. He spots a masked figure among the spectators and realizes an assassin is watching him. He starts panicking, thinking the guy might be out for revenge since the last attempt on his life failed. While Jaseo is distracted by the assassin, Thin-Face's sword is still zipping around, looking for a chance. The swordsman thinks he's found a blind spot because Jaseo's back is completely turned. He shouts that he's going in, confident that this is the moment the match ends. But at that exact second, the assassin in the crowd lets fly a hidden projectile aimed straight for Jaseo. Jaseo catches the movement and realizes he was right. There really is an assassin after him. Thin-Face's sword is closing the gap, totally unaware of the third party involved in their duel. His feet slam into the boards as he prepares his final, decisive lunge. But before he can even get close, Jaseo reacts with a speed that defies logic. To Thin-Face's sword, it feels like Jaseo is sensing his presence through pure instinct rather than sight. Meanwhile, that momentary lapse in concentration caused Jaseo to completely lose track of his opponent, leaving him frantically scanning his surroundings in search of him. He starts getting in his own head, thinking Jaseo is just mocking him and toying with his pride. Jaseo's opponent tightened his grip on his sword hilt, determined to launch an all-out attack. But just at that moment, Jaseo spun around to face the threat, making everyone think that he was reading his opponent's every move. Inside Jaseo's head, there was only one simple thought: ah, there you are. Thin-Face's sword froze under that gaze, deciding to unleash his ultimate technique, refusing to accept the fact that he was once again being outclassed in speed. Thin-Face's sword's feet slid across the grit as he prepared to unleash his attack. His figure suddenly blurred into nothing but streaks on the arena floor, leaving Jaseo completely stunned. The air in the arena was thick with dust as Jaseo stood stunned before Thin-Face's sword's invisible technique. But at this critical moment, his eyes were locked onto something that the crowd had yet to notice. Out of nowhere, a hidden weapon streaks through the air, aimed right at his blind spot. While Thin-Face's sword is still zipping around the floor, an assassin in the distance has already made their move. Jaseo finally confirms his worst fear: there really is a professional killer targeting him. Thin-Face's sword is completely blindsided, wondering why his opponent suddenly stopped focusing on him. Jaseo pivots, taking a stance that faces away from his official opponent and toward the incoming threat. He goes for a quick draw, moving with a speed he didn't even know he possessed. But as the projectile gets closer, he realizes something weird. The thing is moving way slower than he expected. In his state of heightened perception, the lethal dart looks like it's just lazily drifting toward him. He grips his sword hilt, thinking he's in deep trouble if he doesn't time this perfectly. With a sharp ring, he pulls the blade from its scabbard to intercept the strike. He swings, meeting the hidden weapon with a precise, heavy strike. Sparks fly as his sword connects with the tiny piece of metal. The impact feels familiar, reminding him of another time he accidentally did something way above his pay grade. Suddenly, a massive surge of blood chi erupted from the point of impact, leading Thin-Faced Sword to believe that Jaseo was channeling his chi in anticipation of his attack. The swordsman tries to charge through the chaos, convinced that Jaseo is finally revealing his true power. He grits his teeth and decides to match that intensity with everything he's got. But he never got the chance. The shockwave from the explosion amplified, followed by a flying elbow strike that landed square in Thin-Faced Sword's mouth. The entire scene of Jaseo's 2-for-1 strike played out as the shockwave from the hidden projectile sent him flying backward, accidentally slamming him directly into Thin-Faced Sword. He's out cold before he even hits the ground, his face a mess of blood and confusion. The crowd, including his #1 fan So Gukai, can't believe what they just witnessed. Jaseo stands over his fallen opponent, looking more like a terrified victim than a conquering hero. Thin-Faced Sword lies in the center of the arena, completely defeated by a move Jaseo didn't even mean to make. Jaseo stares at his hands, trying to process how he just accidentally unleashed that kind of power. He tries to look cool for the crowd, but his internal monologue is a screaming mess. His sword is still vibrating from the impact of the chi-infused weapon. His nose starts bleeding from the strain, and he wonders if he just blocked a master-level attack. The stadium erupts in cheers as the announcer officially declares him the winner. So Gukai and the other low-tier warriors are going wild, convinced their brother Heo is a god among men. An old man in the crowd starts preaching about Jaseo's mercy, claiming he chose not to use his chi to save his opponent's life. The fans eat it up, praising his noble character for minimizing harm in a simple tournament match. Jaseo just stands there with a bloody nose and a derpy expression, glad that he's at least still breathing. A loud gong sounds out, signaling the end of the day's matches. The announcer takes the stage and drops a bombshell. Tomorrow, Jaseo has to fight the notorious poison wolf Yibu. And as if that wasn't bad enough, he's scheduled to face Duyon from the Amei sect the day after. The official asked the winner if he had any words for the fans who had just witnessed his victory, but he had long since disappeared. Jaseo doesn't say a word. He just turns and starts walking away, looking for the nearest exit. Later, he's tossing some coins in his hand, feeling completely used by the tournament organizers. He realizes they're using his fake status to hype up the tournament and lure in more applicants. He stops in his tracks, deciding that his best bet is to pack his bags and vanish immediately. But as he looks at the lineup of lunatics waiting for him, he realizes he's truly stuck in this mess. As Jaseo tries to make a quiet exit, a familiar, unsettling voice stops him in his tracks. He shudders, the sound of that creepy laughter sending a chill straight down his spine. A man named Jang Chill steps out, waving a mocking finger as he identifies his old friend. He leans in close, reminding Jaseo of the time he absolutely crushed him at Chinjia Hall 2 months ago. Jang Chill's face is twisted in a cruel grin as he recalls the specific sound of Jaseo's fingers breaking. Jaseo can only stand there, sweating bullets as the ghost of a past defeat comes back to haunt him. With a slow, deliberate motion, Jang Chill draws his blade, the steel catching the light. Jaseo's heart hammers against his ribs. He knows exactly what this man is capable of. Jang Chill doesn't believe the hype, convinced that Jaseo is just a fraud pulling a clever trick. Nearby warriors stop and stare, wondering why this loudmouth is picking a fight with today's winner. He points his sword directly at Jaseo's chest, his eyes wide with a manic sort of glee. He's determined to expose Jaseo as a fake master and steal all the glory for himself. Jaseo tries to maintain a calm facade, even though his internal monologue is a frantic mess. He knows the truth. His martial arts are barely a step above the lowest level. Memories of that day at Chinjia Hall flood back, showing a younger Jaseo broken and defeated. He stares at Jang Chill, feeling the heavy weight of a revenge he's nowhere near ready to take. Jang Chill laughs at him, seeing the fear in his eyes as a sign that he's already won. He promises that this encounter won't end with just a few broken fingers this time. The crowd watches in suspense, as Jang Chil prepares to strike down the man they think is a hero. Jaseo remains motionless, looking every bit the stoic master, though he's actually paralyzed with anxiety. "What's the matter?" Jang Chil mocks. "Are you so scared you can't even move?" Internally, Jaseo is in agony. A sudden, sharp pain in his dantian is making it hard to even breathe. He realizes his body is hitting its limit after taking too many hits over the last few days. Blood starts to trickle from his nose, and his vision blurs as the physical strain takes its toll. Jang Chil sees the nosebleed and laughs, thinking it's just a desperate act to get out of the fight. He calls Jaseo a low-tier nobody, a comment that rings out much louder than he intended. That one specific phrase causes the surrounding warriors to stop and bristle with sudden anger. Jang Chil realizes he's stepped in it when he sees the dark looks on the faces of the other low-tier fighters. Just then, Sogukai appeared out of nowhere, his face flushed with rage at the blatant insult to their class. "You think you can just look down on us like that?" he bellows, his voice echoing through the courtyard. Jang Chil stammers, trying to explain that he only meant the clown standing in front of him. But it's too late. His arrogance has united the crowd against him. Sogukai interprets Jaseo's silence as humility and won't stand for such a great man being disrespected. He rallies the other low-tiers, shouting that they can't just stand by while one of their own is insulted. With a satisfying crack, a fist connects squarely with Jang Chil's jaw, sending blood flying. The arrogant swordsman is blindsided as the low-tier mob decides they've had enough of his talk. Jang Chil is quickly overwhelmed by a sea of angry warriors defending Jaseo's honor. Jaseo watches the chaos unfold, wondering if he really was the one they were talking about. Realizing this is his only chance, he decides to slip away while the mob is busy with Jang Chil. He makes it back to his room and immediately starts packing his things, desperate to leave the city. As he stuffs his bag, his hand brushes against a worn, blood-stained martial arts manual. He looks down at the title, Gujial's Soul-Breaking Sword, and thinks about the mysterious old man who gave it to him. In a memory, the legendary Wu Qinggrin stands tall despite being riddled with arrows, telling a young boy he was born with incredible martial talent. He gazes at the child with a mix of regret and hope, wishing they had met just a few years earlier. "You might have become the greatest under heaven," the dying warrior whispers, a faint smile on his bloodied face. Back in the present, Jaseo scoffs and calls him a liar as he stares at the worn manual in his hands. He knows the truth. He's no master, and he barely escaped with his life today. Resigned to his fate as a regular person, he ties his traveling bag shut, finally ready to leave this mess behind. "I've eaten well and stayed warm," he tells himself. "Now it's definitely time to move on." Outside, the sky is clear, but the peace of the late afternoon is about to be shattered. A sudden loud shout for the great Twin Nosebleeds hero rings through the hallway, making Jaseo jump. Bang, the door is kicked open with enough force to make the whole room rattle. Sion Hwa peeks her head through the doorway, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Brother, I knew you'd be here," she chirps, completely ignoring his look of absolute horror. She didn't come empty-handed. She presents a steaming plate of pork belly that smells irresistible. Jaseo finds himself sitting at the table, his stomach winning the battle over his common sense as she mentions victory wine. With a manic, wide-eyed grin, Sion Hwa pours a generous cup of the celebration liquor. Jaseo looks at the overflowing feast, feeling that this level of hospitality is a bit excessive for a single win. He figures he can take just one quick sip of the wine to be polite, and then make his escape. "How is it?" Sion Hwa asks, leaning in so close that their faces are almost touching. Suddenly, the room begins to spin, and Jaseo's head feels like it's filled with lead. His eyes widen in realization as he stares at the grinning girl. Did you spike this wine?" Before he can even stand up, his body gives out and he collapses right into Sion Hwa's arms. She giggles, explaining that she got a special sleeping draft from the pharmacy just for him. The blurred image of the inn emphasizes the deep, drugged sleep he's been forced into to prepare for tomorrow's fight. Outside, Sogukai nonchalantly tells his friends he only had a calm conversation. While inside, Jaseo finally wakes up in a cold sweat. Jaseo bolts upright, staring at the moon. He realizes he slept through the day and is officially screwed. So Gukai notices he's a mess and invites him over for a drink, wondering why he's sweating so much. Jaseo just stares at his hands, feeling something weird. That long sleep did more than he expected. He feels completely recharged and full of energy. He looks out the window, but the sight of the guards ruins the mood. Security is tight as steel. Getting out of here is going to be tough. He starts dreading his upcoming fight with Poison Wolf Yibu. He can practically feel Yibu's axes cutting him into pieces. He decides to take a risk and slips out into the night anyway. He needs to come up with a plan, and fast. He finds himself standing outside the massive arena. He wonders if this is the spot where his life ends tomorrow. He's desperate to find some kind of excuse to forfeit. He notices the arena floor is in pretty rough shape. He leans down, spotting a nail sticking out of the wood. Suddenly, a dirty idea pops into his head. If the fight gets dusty enough, his opponent won't see a thing. Those protruding nails would be invisible in the middle of a brawl. He imagines Yibu stepping back and landing right on one. A nail through the sole of the foot would definitely end the match on the spot. He sits there for a moment, letting the plan sink in. Then the guilt hits him. He starts questioning what he's even doing with his life. He seriously considers just quitting and becoming a mountain farmer. He remembers being told he had great bones for this. It feels like a sick joke. He tries to push himself up, but the wood just shatters under his hand. He loses his balance and grabs the stone steps to steady himself. The stone doesn't just crack, it shatters into pieces the moment he touches it. He stares at his hand, then at the broken stone. He assumes the upkeep at this place is just terrible and starts wondering if this is even the right arena. He walks off into the night, stressing over whether he's really going to cheat to win. Behind him, he leaves a trail of destroyed stone and wood. The damage looks like it was caused by a professional, but he doesn't even notice. The sun rises over the temple, signaling the start of the tournament. Jaseo groans as he slowly wakes up. He's back in bed, looking like he just ran a marathon in his sleep. So Gukai tells him it's time to get up. The matches are already halfway through the day. He asks why Jaseo has been in a cold sweat since yesterday. Jaseo keeps his mouth shut about the nightmare he just had. In his head, he's replaying the image of Yibu hacking him to bits over and over. He checks his neck, amazed he even survived the dream once. He finally drags himself out of bed and heads out. He feels like he's walking toward his own execution, but his legs feel oddly energetic. He steps out into the arena, and the crowd goes wild at the sight of the legendary Heo Jaseo. The crowd is going wild, screaming his name. Jaseo looks at the sheer number of warriors and wonders where they all came from. An officer directs the newcomers toward the registration area. Jaseo realizes Manhwa Fort is using his reputation as bait to reel in more fighters. With him as the main attraction, they'll have a line of recruits out the door as long as the money holds up. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out to him. It's Jang Chil, a man with buck teeth and a thin mustache, looking worse for wear with bandages all over his face. Suddenly, a large blade fell with a loud clang onto the stone floor. His opponent for today towers over him. Poison Wolf Yibu, a massive man with dark skin and afro and a yellow eye patch, bows respectfully. He thanks Jaseo for a medicinal pill he was given previously, saying it helped him immensely. Yibu is an honorable warrior. He promises to put everything he has into this match to show his respect. Jaseo stares up at the mountain of a man, realizing Yibu is just as intense as his previous opponent. He puts on his best master face and smiles, praising Yibu's bravery for giving his all. Then he makes a proposal. Instead of a long fight, why not settle everything with a single move? He offers a deal. If he can't win in one move, he'll simply accept defeat. Yibu is taken aback. A single move against a man of his size is a bold claim, but he accepts the challenge. He clenches his fist, ready to unleash his ultimate technique in response. Internally, Jaseo is celebrating. If he can just survive one move, he might actually make it out of this alive. A banner of Manryong Fort snaps in the wind under a clear blue sky. The gong sounds, and the two warriors face off in the center of the massive wooden arena. Yibu's expression is cold and focused. Jaseo is trying his hardest to keep his cool, while a bead of sweat rolls down his face. Yibu tells him to draw his sword. Jaseo stays stoic, claiming his sword is as good as drawn even in its sheath, and tells the big man to just come at him. His mind is racing. Kicking up a massive dust cloud is the only trick he has left. His plan is simple. Use his inner energy to kick up the dirt on the arena floor and blind his opponent. While Yibu is panicking in the dust, Jaseo will slip behind him and end it. Yibu charges in, his massive chain axes swinging. Jaseo focuses, drawing every last bit of chi from his dantian and forcing it down into his legs. He prays his meager chi, the stuff he learned from a peasant's breathing manual, won't fail him now. Energy crackles around his feet as he prepares to strike the ground. Yibu is closing the distance fast, chains rattling as he moves in for the kill. Now Jaseo slams his foot down with all his might. He expects a massive explosion of dirt, but nothing happens. He grinds his teeth in frustration. The floor feels solid, there's no dust rising at all. Panic sets in. The terrain is completely different from yesterday. Yibu doesn't slow down, letting out a roar as he swings his axes. The chains whistle through the air, crossing in front of Jaseo. Jaseo jumps back just in time as the heavy blades slam into the floorboards. In the crowd, Jang Chil is gloating to his companion. He's the one who had the arena fixed this morning. Jaseo looks toward the stands, realizing that rat-faced bully is behind this. Jang Chil laughs, bragging that he reinforced the floor with thick, dried oak specifically to withstand a master's power. He's convinced he's finally cornered Jaseo and seen through all his tricks. He watches with a sadistic grin, waiting to expose Jaseo for the fraud he thinks he is. Poison Wolf Yibu doesn't hold back, whipping his heavy chains around with terrifying speed. The metal links whistle through the air, as Jaseo barely stays a step ahead of the spinning blades. Yibu pauses, his axes poised. He's frustrated that his opponent still hasn't drawn his weapon. Jaseo keeps up his master persona, casually complimenting Yibu's axe work while internally screaming in terror. His mind is a mess of panic, seriously considering if he should just throw in the towel right now. But then a strange heat begins to stir in his dantian, pulsing down toward his legs. His feet don't hurt anymore. Instead, his soles feel strangely refreshed and light. He remembers the food Sim Jiol gave him earlier and wonders just what kind of powerful medicine it contained. Seeing no other way out, he strikes a dramatic pose, announcing he'll use his ultimate, one-strike-certain-kill technique. His only real goal is to make it look good while he loses, so he can keep his life and get out of there. Yibu's eyes light up with martial fervor. He's honored to face a secret art and prepares his own ultimate move. The air itself seems to scream as Yibu begins to spin his chains in a chaotic, overlapping pattern. He unleashes a whirlwind of steel that covers the entire arena floor in a lethal storm. In the stands, Sim Jiol and So Gukai watch with bated breath, recognizing the legendary viciousness of Yibu's assault. They fear even a master like Heo Jaseo will struggle to find an opening in such a perfect defense. The impact is deafening, sending a massive shockwave across the stage as the chains tear into everything. Jaseo's eyes go wide, completely overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the power coming at him. Yibu lets out a primal roar, pouring every ounce of his strength into the final strike of his secret art. Jaseo's plan is simple: dodge at the last second, swing his sword once for show, and then feint to end the fight. He draws his sword with a flourish, his foot slamming down as he prepares to make his move. Suddenly, the arena is swallowed by a colossal explosion of dust and splinters. The view is completely obscured, leaving the audience and combatants blinded by the debris. Yibu is stunned, realizing that Heo Jaseo vanished into the dust the moment he drew his steel. The crowd is in an uproar, straining their eyes to see through the thick brown haze that has blanketed the stage. No one can tell who is still standing, or if the match has already been decided in that split second. Inside the cloud of dust, Jaseo stood there with a blank expression, wondering how the floor had collapsed at the exact moment he drew his sword. He freezes, gripping his sword and wondering if he managed to survive the massive attack. He looked up and saw a sharp blade piercing through the settling dust, pointing straight at his opponent's knee. As the air clears, the silence is broken by his own confused gasp as he realizes where he is. Yibu stands over a jagged hole in the stage, looking down at Jaseo in absolute awe. The giant warrior laughs, deeply impressed that his full-range assault was neutralized by such a clever move. Jaseo is staring up from inside the hole, his face twisted in a mixture of shock and sheer terror. He realized this mess was caused by Yibu's technique, but he still couldn't believe Yibu was strong enough to shatter the reinforced oak floor with a single chain strike. Yibu retracts his axes, his expression one of pure respect for a superior opponent. He declares that the match has indeed been decided in a single move, just as Jaseo predicted. Folding his hands in a traditional martial salute, Poison Wolf Yibu loudly concedes defeat to Jaseo. Jaseo remains stuck in the hole, completely baffled as to how he just won another fight. The entire arena erupts into deafening cheers, chanting the name of the legendary master who conquered the stage. Sim Jiol and the others are convinced they just witnessed a masterclass in using the environment to one's advantage. The spectators whisper in amazement, sure that the rumors of Jaseo's hidden heritage must be true. Yibu looks down into the pit, waiting for the master to make his grand exit from the hole he created. Jaseo just stares back, sweat dripping down his face as he realizes his luck has somehow held out once again. While Yibu is grinning with newfound respect, Jaseo is internally trembling, branding the warrior a complete monster he never wants to face again. The broken floor stands as a testament to the sheer, terrifying force that was unleashed during their brief exchange. Beneath the shattered wood, the very ground is cracked and cratered, leaving the audience in awe of the power they believe Jaseo just masterfully handled. The whole place is going wild for Jaseo. The crowd is starting to lose control, hearing rumors that this guy is on the same level as the legendary 4 heavenly dragon generals. Heo Jaseo hears the chatter and can't believe how fast these crazy lies are spreading. The disciples are already imagining him getting challenged by the biggest icons in the Murim. Jaseo is screaming internally. The last thing he wants is some legendary general coming after him. Meanwhile, Sogukai is out in the yard, putting in some serious work with his twin blades. He's pushing himself to the limit, sweat dripping, as he focuses on his form. His footwork is on point, kicking up clouds of dust with every quick move. The guy is actually pretty fast, swinging his swords in a practiced blur. Watching from behind a pillar, Jaseo is surprised that the bald guy is actually half decent. Seeing real talent like that makes him realize just how much of a fraud he really is. He figures this is the perfect chance to slip away, while everyone is distracted. He grabs his gear and tries to bolt, but a loud shout stops him in his tracks. It's Sogukai, and he's already dropping into a deep, respectful bow. He begs for a lesson, asking the master to take just one look at his swordsmanship. He's practically pleading, saying lower-tier guys like him have no one else to turn to for advice. Jaseo is dying inside, annoyed that he's getting dragged into another master moment. He slaps on a fake smile and says he was impressed by what he saw, then tries to brush him off. Sogukai is floored that a master like him would actually bother to watch his training. Jaseo tries to play it down, saying he still has everything to learn about the path of the sword. He tells him he's in no position to be judging anyone else's techniques. The words hit Sogukai like a physical blow, leaving him standing there in shock. Leaves drift by as the weight of the statement slowly sinks in. The bald martial artist starts sweating, wondering if his skills are so pathetic a master can't even recognize them. He clenches his fist until the veins pop, convinced his years of effort were a total waste. He hangs his head in shame, apologizing for his arrogance and admitting he's failed his own path. Jaseo realizes he messed up. His attempt at being humble just crushed the guy's spirit. He sees how genuine the guy is, and feels a slight twinge of guilt for the confusion. Simjeol also stepped forward as Jaseo prepared to leave. He asked about the bundle on his back, realizing he had prepared for a long journey. Jaseo decides to be blunt this time, so no one misinterprets his departure. He looked his two roommates straight in the eye and announced that he was officially leaving Manryong Fort. Simjeol was stunned, wondering why anyone would walk away from such a sweet setup. They point out that he's basically guaranteed a high-ranking position after his wins. Jaseo puts on his best mysterious face and says he never intended to settle down in one place. He tells them not to try and stop him, because it's simply time for him to move on. The guys stand there in silence, completely blown away by how selfless he seems. He drops a line about still needing to see the sword clearly, framing his departure as a spiritual journey. He takes his final step toward the gate, ready to get as far away as possible. He offers a formal bow, telling them they might meet again if fate allows it. So Gukai is moved to tears, convinced Jaseo is a true reclusive genius. Simjeol bowed back with total respect, vowing to live up to the resolve he had shown them today. Heo Jaseo is feeling pretty good about himself, thinking his mysterious master act at the fort was totally flawless. He's finally out in the open, surrounded by nothing but mountains and fresh air. He wonders where he should head next, now that he's officially a free man again. He realizes he might have leaned a bit too hard into the acting, and decides it's best to disappear into the wilderness for a while. Just as he's enjoying the peace, he hears the sound of hooves hitting the dirt road behind him. He whips around, already sensing that his quiet retirement is about to be cut short. It's Sion Hwa, and she pulls her horse to a sudden stop right in front of him. She looks genuinely hurt, asking how he could just shake her heart and then disappear without a word. Jaseo is immediately annoyed, especially since she won't stop calling him brother. He starts wondering if he did something terrible in a past life to be cursed with this kind of luck. Honestly, the guy is about 5 seconds away from losing it and smacking her. Sion Hwa jumps off her horse and grabs his hands, looking like she's about to burst into tears. She's acting like he's some heroic figure who just saved her soul by reaching out. Jaseo is completely lost, having no idea what she means by shaking her heart. She keeps going, claiming she just had to catch up and tell him how she really feels. Suddenly, another man comes sprinting down the path, screaming for his lady to wait. Jaseo realizes she definitely didn't have permission to leave and asks if she snuck out of the fort. He points at the guy running toward them and tells her she should probably head back before things get worse. The Manryong Fort bodyguard finally catches up, sliding to a stop in a cloud of dust. He's totally panicked, yelling about what might happen if someone sets her room on fire while she's gone. He scolds her for trying to act out some scene from a cheesy martial arts novel. Sion Hwa just stands there with a blank look, acting like she didn't just cause a massive scene. Jaseo can only stare in disbelief, realizing his quiet life is officially over. Night falls as they pull over at a nearby tavern, and Jaseo reflects on how complicated things have become. At least there's a silver lining. He's got a table full of food and a mysterious pouch in front of him. Sion Hwa actually paid him 10 taels of silver just to let her sit at the same table. She's hovering over him with way too much energy while he's just trying to eat in peace. Jaseo looks absolutely drained, cursing the day he ever met this girl. She's grinning like an idiot, clearly having the time of her life. Jaseo has to literally push her face away just to get some breathing room. He brings up the sleeping crane wine she gave him before, wanting to know what was actually in it. She brags that her big sister, who happens to be a legendary doctor, made medicine especially for him. Jaseo isn't convinced and asks for the specific ingredients, worried he's been poisoned. She starts thinking, but it's pretty clear she has no clue what her sister actually used. He calls her out on being so secretive when she clearly doesn't know the answer. He tells her to go stand over there, suspecting she's just trying to trick him into going back to the fort. He pokes her cheek to keep her at a distance, but she doesn't seem to care at all. The peace is shattered when a group of thugs in red robes starts causing trouble at a nearby table. Their leader is a bald guy covered in skull beads, and he is definitely not in a good mood. He's still fuming about being humiliated back at the fort and is looking for someone to take it out on. He grabs a poor patron by the face, lifting him off the ground with ease. He threatens to peel the guy's head off and use it as a trophy while the rest of the tavern watches in terror. The bald thug continues to humiliate the poor serving boy, casually sipping his drink while holding the kid by the face. Nearby patrons whisper among themselves, warning each other to keep their heads down to avoid getting targeted by the ruffians. Jaseo's heart sinks as he realizes he's stuck in a tavern with some truly dangerous individuals. He tries to ignore the scene, but he can see Hwa next to him, her face turning a deep shade of angry red. Just as Jaseo predicted, the crazy brat can't stay quiet and begins to rise from her seat. He desperately tries to signal her to stay still, but his warnings fall on deaf ears as she reaches her breaking point. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, Jaseo feels the overwhelming urge to just grab his things and bolt. Hwa lets out a thunderous shout, calling the thugs out for being the filthy vermin that they are. Jaseo can only sit there in stunned silence, realizing that his chances of a quiet evening have officially vanished. She doesn't stop there, demanding that the ruffians apologize immediately if they have any desire to keep living. Her voice echoes through the entire tavern, commanding the attention of every single person in the room. Jaseo is fuming internally, cursing the fact that he's now associated with someone who stirs up so much trouble. Hwa points a defiant finger at the group, while her bodyguard hovers behind her, clearly stressed by the situation. The rest of the tavern's guests look on in shock, unable to believe what they're witnessing. Whispers spread through the room as people recognize Hwa as the young lady of the prestigious Manhwa fort. The tension spikes even higher when someone spots Jaseo and realizes that the famous Heo Jaseo is right there with her. Suddenly, the crowd starts praising them, thinking they're witnessing a legendary act of righteous chivalry. Jaseo looks like he wants to crawl into a hole, while the patrons around him start getting swept up in the drama. A man with a bandaged face watches from the shadows, his eyes fixed on the unfolding confrontation. Jaseo is far from feeling heroic. He's just trying to figure out how he's going to survive the next 10 minutes. He takes a closer look at the thug's attire, and a cold shiver runs down his spine as he recognizes their red robes. He realizes with horror that they might actually be members of the notorious Red Robe, White-Eyed Demon's crew. He recalls the horrific stories of their recent atrocities and the masters they've slaughtered without mercy. This isn't just a group of common thugs. They're cold-blooded killers who have left a trail of bodies across the land. Even the mention of their leader, the demonic lord himself, is enough to make any sane martial artist turn tail and run. Enraged by the girl's insults, one of the thugs draws his weapon and lunges forward with a murderous intent. Jaseo's eyes widen in panic as he sees the blade coming, knowing he's in no position to fight back. The bald ruffian moves with surprising speed, his sword slicing through the air toward them. Everything seems to slow down for Jaseo as he braces for the impact he's sure is coming. At the very last second, the Manhwa fort bodyguard leaps into action, intercepting the attack with his own blade. The sounds of clashing steel fill the tavern as the bodyguard skillfully parries the thug's relentless assault. He holds his ground against the attackers, his focus entirely on keeping Hwa out of harm's way. Hwa watches the fight with a grim determination, showing no signs of the fear Jaseo is currently feeling. Seeing the bodyguard's prowess, Jaseo suddenly shifts gears, feeling a surge of hope that someone else will handle the mess. He watches the exchange closely, praying that the bodyguard can keep the bastards at bay until they tire themselves out. He tries to mirror the bodyguard's composed expression, acting as if everything is going exactly according to plan. However, he knows that maintaining such high-speed movements is taking a massive toll on the bodyguard's inner energy. He's genuinely impressed by the man's chi control, acknowledging that he's watching a true first-rate master at work. It's a sobering reminder of his own weakness, as he knows he couldn't maintain that level of intensity for even a single breath. But the situation wasn't going as Jaseo had calculated when he suddenly saw a bald guy sneaking up behind him. The bodyguard grits his teeth and calls out to his lady, determined to end the fight as quickly as possible. The bald thug isn't finished yet, sliding back into a low stance as he prepares for his next deadly move. A heavy footstep signals the start of a desperate move. One of the demonic cultists charges forward with a roar, his blade aimed straight for the young lady. Hwa freezes in shock as the cold steel closes in, her eyes wide with the realization that her life is on the line. Knowing that Hwa's death would mean his own certain execution by the Lord of Manhwa Fort, Jaseo forces his body to move. He lunges into the fray, his mind racing with the terrifying consequences of failure. He tries to maintain some level of restraint, hoping to resolve the situation without drawing the full wrath of the demonic cult. With a sudden, desperate burst of speed, Jaseo lunged forward with a truly impressive sword strike. At that exact moment of the swing, time seemed to slow down as Jaseo decided to play his trump card, intentionally unleashing a clumsy slash to shove the young lady Hwa aside. For a fleeting second, Jaseo feels a sense of relief, believing he has managed to save the girl with a perfectly timed intervention. However, that relief is instantly shattered when he hears a sickening squelch and feels a warm spray across his face. To his absolute horror, a severed arm flies through the air, trailing a crimson arc of blood. Jaseo's mask of composure completely crumbles as he stares at the gruesome result of his own frantic strike. The bald thug collapses to his knees, clutching the stump where his arm used to be, his screams of agony piercing the air. The man's eyes burn with a murderous hatred as he vows to inflict a slow and painful death upon the one who maimed him. His fellow cultists rush to his side, their faces twisted in a mixture of shock and blind fury. Panic threatens to overwhelm Jaseo, but he realizes that showing weakness now would be a death sentence for everyone involved. Steeling his nerves, he adopts a fierce, authoritative tone, demanding to know if the thugs have lost their minds by attacking the young lady of Manhwa Fort. He bluffs with everything he has, claiming that he showed mercy by taking only an arm and warning them that their lives are now forfeit. He takes the ultimate gamble, declaring that even their legendary leader, the red-robe white-eyed demon himself, wouldn't escape his blade. The patrons in the tavern are utterly captivated, convinced that they are witnessing the true, terrifying power of the legendary Jaseo. The remaining thugs are left stunned and hesitant, unable to comprehend how a mere novice could speak so dismissively of their master. Just then, the tables and chairs in the tavern suddenly began to shake violently. High above, the tavern's rafters couldn't help but creak with a chilling, hair-raising sound. A sudden surge of killing intent descended upon the entire area, exerting overwhelming pressure on everyone present. The three followers suddenly fell to their knees, bowing repeatedly. Hwa and the bodyguard look on in shock, while Heo Jaseo is already starting to sweat. A mysterious figure with long white hair slowly descends the stairs. The old man comes into full view, dressed in red robes that match his defeated followers. Jaseo recognizes the sheer pressure immediately and starts gulping in fear. It's the red-robe, white-eyed demon himself, and those milky eyes aren't just for show. The rest of the tavern patrons lose their minds and start fleeing in a blind panic. The bodyguard warns Hwa to back up, but she just stands there with a big, defiant grin. The demon lord, Hongpo Biganma, stands tall as his presence fills the entire room. He looks down at the trio from the top of the stairs like they're just bugs in his path. The kneeling thugs are relieved to see their master and immediately start pointing fingers at the intruders. The old man's hand twitches as he begins to gather his inner energy. He flexes his fingers, his veins bulging with the power he's about to unleash. He crosses his arms and tells everyone to shut up, radiating a terrifying aura. He starts screaming at his men for letting themselves get pushed around by 3 worms. Just the vibration of his voice is enough to start cracking the wooden floorboards. A massive shockwave of chi explodes from him, sending furniture flying everywhere. Items on the tables are tossed around like toys by the sheer force of his power. The floor beneath him continues to splinter and crack under the pressure. He focuses his gaze on the group, sensing for their strength. He narrows his eyes, trying to gauge exactly what he's dealing with. From his perspective, only the bodyguard and Hwa have any detectable inner strength worth mentioning. Jaseo sees the old man's focus and wonders if he's reading the whole room through chi alone. He takes a cautious step back, his boots squeaking on the broken wood. He's absolutely terrified, realizing he's trapped on the balcony with a monster. He tries to stay still, thinking that if the demon can't pinpoint him, he might just survive. He considers just making a break for it right now, while the old man is distracted. But the demon lord is confused. He knows there are 3 people, but he can only sense 2. Jaseo realized that this blind guy mistakenly thought the 3rd person in their group was a high-level master with profound chi, and Jaseo, of course, had none of that. Hwa steps forward, completely unfazed, and addresses the demon lord by name. She starts hyping up Jaseo, calling him the Northern Star Darting Sword and a one-strike sword sage. Yaseo's soul basically leaves his body as she claims he knows every blade under heaven. Internally, Jaseo is screaming that he's just a low-tier nobody who wants to live. The demon lord looks down, weighing Hwa's words against the silence he's sensing from Jaseo. Hwa draws her sword and tells the vicious demonic scum to come and get some. A spectator in the background thinks this life-and-death duel is the greatest entertainment he's ever seen. Hwa is having the time of her life, her eyes literally sparkling with excitement. She keeps mocking the demons, daring them to hurry up and start the fight. The thugs are losing their tempers and ready to kill her first for the insult. The bodyguard tries to stop her, begging her to quit provoking them. Jaseo just stares into the distance, his eyes welling up with tears of pure regret. He really just wanted a decent meal, and now he's about to die in a tavern brawl. A figure in white and teal robes dashes through the dark forest path. Duyon wonders where Hwa ran off to, as the sun disappears behind the trees. She looks up at the full moon, hearing the distant sound of a struggle. She pushes her speed to the limit, heading straight for the source of the noise. Back in the tavern, the demon lord's killing intent fills the entire room. Heo Jaseo is sweating bullets, desperately trying to figure out how to stop this before a sword is even drawn. He slowly moves his hand to his hilt, but not to draw it. He holds his position in front of Hwa and the bodyguard, trying to look imposing while he's actually panicking. The demons prepare their weapons, as the old master watches Jaseo's every move. Jaseo stammered, shouting out his grand plan for survival. He was sheathing his sword. It was unclear whether it was part of a plan or simply due to the sheer terror of the old man's overwhelming pressure. But Jaseo stammered and stuttered, finally managing to choke out that from this day on, he would never draw his sword again. On the other side, the demon lord also tilted his head, completely unable to fathom what the person in front of him was intending. He decides that this must be the legendary master who decides battles in a single stroke. He clenches his fist, finding the complete concealment of chi to be incredibly impressive. He roars at Jaseo, accusing him of being the most arrogant person he's ever met. Jaseo waves his hands, trying to get the old man to just wait for a second and listen. The Guiyang brothers watch from the side, confused by the master's strategy. Jaseo claims he's sheathing his sword because he's just a low-tier nobody, not worthy of a fight. He looks around the inn, trying to convince the demon that nobody here actually wants to fight him. The bald brothers listen intently, trying to decipher the hidden meaning in his words. Jaseo asks if it isn't just ridiculous to cross swords with people as weak as them. The demon lord grinds his teeth, his face twisting with rage at the perceived insult. He screams at Jaseo, asking if he's being toyed with. The sudden outburst sends a chill through everyone in the room. The entire tavern floor vibrates under the weight of the demon's fury. He demands to know exactly what Jaseo meant by calling himself low tier. Jaseo thinks his plan is working and that it's finally time to talk things out. but one of the Guiyang brothers interprets it as a hero's scolding and draws his blade. They proclaim themselves to be the honorable Guiyang brothers from Guizhou. They're moved by the idea that even a master, like Jaseo, would call himself low-tier to show mercy. They believe his words were meant to shame them for being cowards who were frozen with fear. They vow to cast aside their own fear and stand against the villains. CNHWA is thrilled, cheering for these men who finally understand the way of chivalry. Jaseo's eyes nearly pop out of his head as he realizes they're just making everything worse. Inspired by the bald guys, other warriors in the tavern start drawing their weapons too. They all line up to lend their strength to the one-strike sword sage. The demon lord is absolutely livid now, his eyes glowing with malice. Jaseo is frozen, his internal screaming reaching a whole new level of intensity. CNHWA is ready for the brawl of the century, her face filled with pure excitement. The demonic thugs aren't laughing anymore. They're ready to slaughter everyone in sight. Hongpo Beganma mutters that things are getting out of hand as he reaches for his own blade. Jaseo just blinks, completely stunned by how his attempt to surrender turned into a full-scale riot. One of the swordsmen crept around to the back, convinced that Jaseo's act of sheathing his blade was actually a feint for a surprise attack. Jaseo realizes with a cold sweat that his plan to surrender has backfired spectacularly. He looks over at the red-robed, white-eyed demon, who is standing perfectly still, like a statue. Jaseo wondered if the old monster's senses were at such a high level that he could perceive every single movement of everyone in the tavern. Suddenly, a warrior from the tavern leaps at the demon's back, hopping for an opening. The demon lord doesn't even turn around, his white eyes glowing with a terrifying light. With a single, fluid motion, he counters the attacker without even looking. A spray of blood paints the wooden floor as the challenger is cut down instantly. The demon finally draws his blade, a dark steel that seems to swallow the moonlight. Another attacker is cleaved down before he can even let out a scream. CNHWA watches the carnage, her jaw dropping in absolute terror. Jaseo realizes that even without chi, anyone can feel the overwhelming presence of death radiating from this man. CNHWA is shaking so hard she can barely stand, fear completely paralyzing her. She takes a step back, her boots clicking against the blood-slicked floorboards. But then, her fear turns into a desperate, wild fury as she looks at her companion. She draws her own blade and screams that she'll cut the demon down with her Xianhua sword. Another warrior is cut down by the demon right in front of her eyes. She stands amidst the growing pool of blood, pointing her small sword at the legendary monster. The demon lord stands over the corpse of his latest victim, his aura chilling the air. He glares at CNHWA, calling her a noisy little wretch who doesn't know her place. CNHWA screams as the demon moves with blinding speed toward her. Jaseo watches helplessly, thinking that the girl would have been much safer if she'd just stayed unconscious. Just as the demon's blade is about to fall, the Manryong Fort bodyguard leaps into the fray to save his lady. The demon lord's gaze is cold and calculating as he meets the new challenger. Their blades clash with a deafening ring, sparks flying in the dark tavern. It's a high-speed exchange of strikes, neither man giving an inch as they trade blows. The bodyguard grinds his teeth, pouring every ounce of his strength into holding back the monster. The demon lord smirks, his free hand beginning to glow with a malevolent, swirling red energy. A massive explosion of chi erupts from the demon's palm, sending the bodyguard flying back. CNHWA watches in horror as her protector is tossed aside like a ragdoll. She's completely frozen, staring into the face of her own death as the demon raises his sword again. A massive wave of blood-red energy tears through the tavern floor, heading straight for her. She closes her eyes and screams, waiting for the end that seems inevitable. Suddenly, a figure descends from the night sky, illuminated by the bright silver moon. A white-sleeved arm reaches out, moving with a grace that seems otherworldly. The demon's strike is met with a high-pitched ring as it's deflected away from the girl. CNHWA peeks through one eye, stunned to find herself still alive and unharmed. A blinding orb of pure, frosty white chi explodes outward, neutralizing the demon's attack. The demon lord was forced back, his feet skidding across the floor. The sheer power of the newcomer's arrival creates a whirlwind that clears the air of the demon's killing intent. Du-Yeon lands softly on the tavern balcony, her white and teal robes fluttering in the wind. She stands tall, her sword drawn and ready, radiating a calm but absolute power. Du-Yeon stands tall on the balcony, her unsheathed sword catching the moonlight as she faces the demonic threat below. Her eyes are sharp and focused, reflecting a calm determination that contrasts with the bloodbath in the tavern. Hongpo Biganma glares up at her, his white eyes narrowing as he senses a familiar and potent chi emanating from the newcomer. She declares her name and her affiliation, identifying herself as Du-Yeon, a disciple of the prestigious Imei sect. The warriors in the room are overcome with shock, shouting in disbelief that the famous Ice Jade Ice Sword has arrived to save them. The demon lord repeats the name of her sect, his expression darkening with a mix of recognition and deep-seated malice. He scoffs at her arrival, mocking her as just another arrogant girl who is foolish enough to challenge him without knowing her place. While Du-Yeon braces herself for a life-or-death struggle, Jaseo can only watch in wide-eyed amazement at the sudden appearance of the legendary swordswoman. Chap 13. The old monster in red stands in the center of the wooden pavilion, facing down his prey. He mocks them, saying the scent of Imei incense led him straight to their hideout. The red-robed demon stares at Du-Yeon, asking if a little girl like her really thinks she can stop him. She fires back, telling the villain he's done enough damage to the world already. Over on the side, Hwa grins and waves to her female master, while Jaseo thinks to himself that this brat is nothing but pure bad luck. The protector steps up, ready to jump into the fray alongside him. Jaseo tries to look confident, acting like the arrival of a first-class master changes everything. But the protector is already coughing blood, realizing the old man's internal energy is on a different level. He tells Jaseo that they'd be in a much worse spot if he hadn't disrupted the demon's flow earlier. While the other two discuss their battle strategy, Jaseo gives Hwa a chop to knock her out and stop her from causing trouble. He's definitely not in the mood for any pep talks or motivational speeches right now. Du-Yeon looks back at them, checking to see if they're holding it together. Hwa has been out cold for a while now, her lifeless eyes rolling around. Jaseo quickly covers up the fact that he knocked her out by making up an excuse that she's suffering from a massive psychological shock from the battle. Jaseo glances down at the girl, his mind already working on a way to escape. He suggests they eliminate the danger factor by moving her to safety immediately. The protector thinks it's a brilliant tactical move and tells him to go for it. The demon's face twists with rage at being ignored while they plan their retreat. He lets out a roar, releasing a massive wave of pink energy across the floor. Du-Yeon and the bodyguard leap into the air to dodge the blast. The man swings his sword with everything he's got, trying to land a heavy blow. The old monster barely flinches, blocking the blade with a cold stare. Du-Yeon follows up with a spinning air attack, her robes fluttering as she slashes down. A flurry of strikes follows as the two of them try to overwhelm the silver-haired demon. He laughs at the girlish assault, completely unimpressed by their teamwork. The protector tries a low strike, while the demon's focus is on Du-Yeon. Another heavy clash sends sparks flying, but the old man doesn't give an inch. The protector's hands are vibrating from the sheer force of the impact. The demon reaches out with a glowing pink palm, targeting the man's head. A direct hit sends a shockwave through the protector's skull. Du-Yeon watches in horror as her ally takes a lethal blow. With blood pooling in his eyes, he tells her to take the girl and run. The demon fires a concentrated beam of chi straight through the man's skull. The protector screams in agony as the energy burns him from the inside out. The old man stands over the dying man, looking totally bored. Du-Yeon grinds her teeth, not daring to recklessly charge in again. She needs to change her spellcasting technique immediately, as she cannot brute force a monster like this. She shouts for young hero Heo to get the girl out of there while he still can. Jaseo flinches, realizing he finally has the perfect excuse to bail. He shouts back that he's already on it, sounding way more heroic than he actually feels. He starts dragging the girl away, while Jang Chil watches from the shadows, terrified of being left behind. Jang Chil panics, wondering if Jaseo is actually just running away by himself. The demon lunges toward them, promising to turn their corpses into incense. Du-Yeon cuts him off, her blade gleaming as she blocks his path. She vows to shut his filthy mouth for good, but the old monster just laughs. The red-robed demon shatters Do-yeon's blade with a single swipe of his hand. He catches the edge of her sword with his bare claws, the metal snapping like a twig. A massive burst of pink energy erupts, sending the broken shards flying everywhere. Do-yeon can only watch in shock as her weapon is reduced to nothing more than scrap. From the balcony, Jaseo flinches at the sound of the metal snapping, realizing the situation just got a lot worse. The other martial artists stand frozen in shock, watching Do-yeon lose her sword as easily as taking candy from a baby. Jaseo decides he's seen enough. He needs to get out of there before the monster turns his attention to the balcony. But Hwa starts groggily waking up, her voice barely a whisper as she looks around. Suddenly, a high-pitched voice rings out, calling Jaseo the Silent Star Leopard Sword and asking if he's finally joining the fight. Jaseo stops dead in his tracks, immediately recognizing that obnoxious, goat-like voice. He looks back, his eyes narrowing as he realizes his escape plan just hit a massive wall. He curses Jang Chil under his breath, wondering if the scavenger is really going to drag him down to the grave. Jang Chil points a finger right at him, announcing to everyone that the great master capable of killing the demon is right there. The old monster slowly turns around, his milky white eyes fixed on the balcony where Jaseo is standing. Jang Chil has a nasty grin on his face, mocking Jaseo for trying to slip away while everyone else does the heavy lifting. The demon starts walking toward the stairs, his presence alone heavy enough to crush anyone in his path. He stands at the base of the balcony, his focus entirely on the man he thinks is a legendary master. Jaseo stares back with an intense gaze, calling Jang Chil a rat for selling him out like that. Internally, he's fuming. If he's going to die here, he's making sure he takes that scavenger with him. Jang Chil just laughs, satisfied with himself for forcing the master into the spotlight. But Jaseo quickly shifts gears, praising Jang Chil for successfully luring the demon in exactly as they planned. He shouts for him to scatter the poison now, acting like they've been partners in a secret trap all along. Jang Chil's jaw drops as he stammers in confusion, having no idea what poison Jaseo is talking about. The demon doesn't wait to find out, lunging forward to crush the man he thinks is a walking biohazard. Jang Chil starts choking and coughing as he tries to process the sudden turn of events. He desperately tries to explain that he doesn't have any poison on him. Jaseo doesn't let up, shouting about how admirable it is that he even coated his own body with poison for the cause. The old monster grabs the scavenger by the face, his grip like a vice. Then the old demon throws Jang Chil straight toward where Jaseo is standing. Jaseo quickly opens his mouth, shouting that he will remember this guy's noble sacrifice for justice, while stepping aside to let the annoying fellow crash headfirst into the railing and tumble right off the pavilion. Jang Chil slams into the ground near where Hwa was safely landed by Jaseo earlier, officially knocking him out of the fight. Jaseo stands watching from the railing, his face covered in sweat, struggling to process how the hell to escape from this mess. The demon stands there, frustrated that he can't sense any powerful energy coming from the man in front of him. He roars at Jaseo, asking how long he's going to keep hiding his presence and playing these petty tricks. He demands that the master stop fooling around and finally draw his sword. Jaseo notices something strange. The old man's blade is pointed slightly away from where he's actually standing. He looks closer at those milky, clouded eyes and sees the truth. The legendary demon isn't just old. He's completely blind and relying on sound alone. A confident smirk spreads across Jaseo's face as he realizes he finally has an opening he can exploit. He admits this goes against his usual principles of staying out of trouble, but he doesn't have much of a choice now. He reaches for his blade, ready to bet everything on this one single chance. He shouts at the top of his lungs, declaring that from now on, the red-robed demon is his to handle alone. Heo Jaseo stands his ground against the red-robed, wide-eyed demon, the tension in the air thick enough to cut. Do-yeon, her robes torn and her blade shattered, can barely stay on her feet after the brutal exchange. The old monster remains motionless, his white, clouded eyes staring into nothingness as he listens for the slightest movement. Jaseo raises his sword, declaring with forced confidence that he will be the one to take down the legendary demon. He tells Do-yeon to focus on the disciples instead, trying to play the part of the heroic master. She looks at her broken weapon and warns him that this monster is on a different level. He'll have to put his life on the line. Jaseo doesn't flinch, thinking to himself that there hasn't been a single day where he wasn't gambling with his life. To him, that's just the reality of being an underdog in a world filled with monsters. Do-yeon is visibly moved, impressed by what she perceives as his unwavering courage and resolve. She grips her broken hilt tightly, refusing to stay on the sidelines while he risks everything. Jaseo is taken aback by her sudden surge of fighting spirit, realizing his bluff might have worked a little too well. Cold sweat beads on his forehead as the weight of the situation finally starts to sink in. He refocuses on the demon, nodding again that the old man's eyes truly don't seem to track anything. The demon's face is a mask of wrinkled stone, his senses honed to a terrifying degree. Jaseo wonders if he should try to circle around and strike from the blind spot behind the monster's back. It's the classic underdog strategy, find the one opening the master can't see. However, Jaseo also keeps in mind that the old man's hearing is terrifyingly sharp, since he previously took out a sneak attacker with absolute ease. The demon swings his sword, sending out lethal arcs of red energy that effortlessly cleave the opponent's body in two. He bellows a demand to know where the master is hiding, frustrated by Jaseo's lack of a powerful presence. Jaseo clenches his teeth, knowing he can't afford even a single mistake here. He realizes he needs to play this even smarter, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He decides on a new plan, the opening within an opening strategy. Nearby, Duyon has already engaged the other disciples, her movements a blur of white and blue. She clashes with a hulking, bald monk, her broken blade sparking against his heavy weapon. The monk laughs at her, mocking her jade ice sword and calling her nothing but a weak woman. Duyon's eyes flare with anger as she tells the brute to shut his mouth. She delivers a devastating kick to his solar plexus, declaring that he isn't even worth using a sword on. The impact sends the monk reeling back, his breath stolen by the sheer force of the blow. Jaseo watches the exchange, looking for a way to use the chaos to his advantage. He shifts his weight, his boots creaking softly against the floorboards as he prepares to move. He knows that if a clear opening doesn't present itself, he'll have to force one open. The bald monk panics as he realizes Jaseo is lunging at him from behind, his raised sword still not having returned to a defensive stance. Jaseo sees his chance to create the distraction he needs. Jaseo steps forward, shouting to grab attention and challenging whether the bald monk with only one arm can withstand his heavy sword. He roars that his own single arm is more than enough to deal with a fraud like him. In a move no one expected, Jaseo simply lets go and hurls his sword straight at the monk's face. The blade whistles through the air, forcing the monk to jerk his head back to avoid getting impaled. By the time the disciple recovers, Jaseo is already behind him, whispering that the one-armed thing was just a lie. The monk is stunned, sputtering about how cowardly it is to throw away one's primary weapon. Jaseo doesn't care about honor. In a life-or-death fight, the only thing that matters is surviving. He lunges forward and grabs the monk, using his momentum to pull him into a compromising position. He locks his arm around the man's throat, intending to use the disciple as a human shield or a distraction. Heo Jaseo grips the bald monk's throat, whispering a cold, false assurance that he's already taken care of the man's injuries. Across the pavilion, the red-robed, white-eyed demon stands poised, his blade ready to strike at the first hint of movement. Frustrated by the silence, the blind monster growls out a demand for his opponent to stop hiding like a cowardly rat. His sandals creak against the splintered wood as he shifts his weight, his heightened ears straining to catch even a heartbeat. With a sudden roar of "Come out!" he unleashes a powerful surge of energy that shatters the floorboards beneath him. Jaseo remains perfectly still, keeping his captive positioned as a human shield between himself and the impending attack. He skillfully maneuvers the monk, ensuring the man's presence is the only thing the blind demon can sense in that direction. The demon takes the bait, his blind eyes narrowing as he locks onto what he believes is his target, especially now that he has begun to sense the aura and the provocative sounds deliberately emitted by Jaseo. A devastating arc of red light tears through the air, striking the human shield with lethal precision. The force of the strike is immense, a testament to the old monster's terrifying power even while blind. The demon stands over his victim, confident that he has finally snuffed out the nuisance that dared to defy him. He mocks his fallen foe, remarking that the master wasn't nearly as good at hiding his presence as he thought. But the voice that answers him is weak and wet with blood, gasping out a desperate "Master." The old man's expression crumbles into pure shock as he recognizes the voice of his own loyal disciple, Hanga. Horror washes over his face, his clouded eyes widening as he realizes the magnitude of his mistake. He stares down at his blade, buried deep in the chest of the very man he was supposed to lead. Hanga lets out one final, ragged breath, realizing too late that they had both fallen into a perfectly laid trap. From behind the grieving master, Jaseo lets out a taunting chuckle, feigning ignorance about who this Hanga even is. He watches with a cold gaze as the demon's grief and rage begin to boil over, The tables completely turn. The pavilion falls into a grim silence, broken only by the sounds of the wind and the heavy breathing of the survivors. The remaining martial artists could only stand frozen in absolute terror, as right before their eyes, the master and disciple of the demonic faction had just sent each other off on their final journeys. Do-yeon looks at Jaseo, her eyes filled with a mix of awe and a new, unsettling fear of his ruthless cunning. He turns his head slightly, his expression unreadable as he prepares for their next move. But internally, Jaseo is screaming in pure panic, desperate to flee the fortress and never look back at the chaos he's wrought. Do-yeon yells out a warning, but the attack is already coming. Jaseo spins around to find a pale, glowing hand inches from his chest. The red-robe, white-eyed demon connects, driving a blast of freezing energy straight into him. A sharp cry escapes Jaseo as the strike hits home. He was hurled backward, tumbling through the air amidst the horror of the martial artists present at the pavilion. His chest feels like it's been replaced with a block of ice as he gasps for breath. The demon coughs up blood, mocking Jaseo's trickery even while praising his own lethal technique. He tells Jaseo to perish in agony as the cold reaches his heart. Jaseo hits the deck hard, his final thoughts filled with pure regret for coming here. Silence falls over the courtyard, with Jaseo and the demon's disciple both lying motionless. His world goes black as he curses the day he ever stepped foot in Manryong Fortress. Suddenly his eyes snap open to a bright, clear sky. Morning has broken over a serene mountain infirmary, far away from the chaos of battle. Jaseo stares up at the ceiling, genuinely shocked to find he's still breathing. He's tucked away in a medical hall, already grumbling about the old demon's final spiteful act. He clutches at his robes, wincing as the lingering chill of the palm strike bites into his skin. Still, he can't help but feel a little proud of himself for surviving. He sits up and starts gloating about being born with the will of heaven, completely missing the person standing behind him. Bikun giggles, teasing the first-class master, who apparently has a massive ego to match his title. Jaseo's heart sinks as he realizes he was just caught talking to himself. She gives him a knowing smile, looking entirely too amused by his situation. He stammers out a few questions, desperately trying to figure out where he is and who this woman is. Bikun just leans in with a playful grin, amused that he doesn't even know who she is yet. Heo Jaseo finally wakes up in a quiet room at the Manryong Fortress Medicine Hall. A physician is standing right there, greeting him with a calm smile. He's still a bit out of it and blurts out that she's a beauty before even asking where he is. She just laughs it off, saying that's a first for her. She introduces herself as Chang Ae-hyun, the lady in charge of the medical wing. The peaceful moment is cut short when Hwa bursts through the door, already in tears. She rushes over, terrified that he might actually be dying. She's heard stories about how the white demon's technique causes victims to just waste away. Jaseo is baffled by the sudden funeral vibes while he's just trying to sit up. Ae-hyun explains that his meridians are completely frozen, blocking all his internal circulation. He stares at his hands, realizing his pressure points are basically locked. The girls look at him with deep concern, but he's just trying to wrap his head around the news. He sits on the edge of the bed, feeling heavier than usual. He tries to flex his internal energy, but it feels like a total dead end. The moment he pushes a little harder, a sharp jolt of pain hits him. Ae-hyun jots down some notes, confirming his energy center is definitely out of commission. Hwa starts wailing again, blaming herself for him losing his martial arts. She's ready to spend the rest of her life nursing him now that he's useless. He just keeps her at arm's length, clearly not interested in the lifelong care package. Ae-hyun tries to settle her down, mentioning that the lord of the fortress is already looking for a cure. She's confident they can find an elixir with enough yang energy to fix him up. But she gives him a very serious warning. Absolutely no martial arts for now. Any attempt to use power will just lead to massive amounts of pain. Jaseo looks out at the courtyard, reflecting on his long history with internal power. He remembers starting out years ago with basic breathing techniques used by old-timers. He spent countless hours training in the freezing snow, trying to build something up. But no matter how hard he worked, he could barely gather a handful of energy. Looking back, it feels like his body was just wired to reject it from the start. He figures losing his martial arts isn't really a tragedy, since he never had much to begin with. Ae-hyun finds him wandering outside and hands over a bowl of medicine. He takes the bowl, looking a bit suspicious of the dark liquid. She brings up his family's reputation as great physicians, basically guilt-tripping him into drinking. He takes a massive gulp to get it over with as quickly as possible. The bitterness hits him so hard he looks like he's just seen the afterlife. Ae-hyun casually mentions she wasn't sure if a human could actually stomach the taste. He recovers and asks if there's any of that sleeping drug she gave him before to help with the pain. She looks at him like he's crazy for calling a basic medicine an elixir. She explains that it's a high-intensity stimulant meant to knock out people in extreme agony. He realizes that stimulation part probably isn't as relaxing as he hoped. Suddenly, another physician runs in shouting about a patient with severe burns. Hyun rushes off to help, leaving him with a perfect opening. He decides to take that as permission and starts raiding the medicine cabinet for those sedative pills. Heo Jaseo looks at the pill he swiped, figuring he better take it and get some sleep before the pain gets any worse. He pops it in and starts chewing, expecting a quick fix for his aching body. It's even more bitter than the liquid stuff, so bad his soul looks like it's trying to leave his body. Outside in the courtyard, things aren't exactly peaceful. Some loudmouth is shouting at disciples for training in the wrong spot. It's a group of petty bullies known as the Seven Rats, and they're clearly looking for trouble. Their leader, Jang Chil, stands front and center with a smug, arrogant look on his face. He calls the disciples worthless scum and tells them to beat it before things get ugly. The disciples try to stand their ground, warning him that young hero Heo won't be happy if he finds out about this. Right on cue, Jaseo walks past, but he's so drowsy from the meds that he just lets out a massive yawn. Jang Chil watches him go, convinced the rumors are true. Jaseo must have lost his power if he's just ignoring them like that. The whole gang starts laughing, thinking their biggest threat is now a total pushover. Jang Chil declares it's time for Jaseo to pay the price for messing with their group earlier. Jaseo stops in his tracks, but it's not because he heard the insults. His whole body starts tingling, and he clutches his chest as the medicine starts warring with his blocked meridians. He slowly turns around with a look of pure agony, but to everyone else, it looks like he's about to murder the entire courtyard. The gang immediately loses their nerve, flinching back from that terrifying scowl. Jaseo is struggling just to stay upright, sweating and wondering who these guys even are. Jang Chil tries to act tough, introducing himself and his band of brothers. Jaseo finally places them as the Seven Rats, looking completely unimpressed, mostly because he's dying inside. Suddenly, someone spots two high-level masters approaching, Thin Face Sword and Poison Wolf Yibu. The two legendary fighters walk through the courtyard, their presence instantly changing the vibe of the room. The gang can't believe their eyes. These guys are famous all the way to Hangzhou for their martial prestige. To everyone's shock, the masters walk straight up to Jaseo and give him a deep, respectful bow. It's a level of respect usually reserved for elders or the heads of great sects. They explain they were worried after hearing the news, but are relieved to see him up and about. Jaseo tries to play it cool despite the crippling stomach cramps, awkwardly telling them he's more or less fine. Poison Wolf Yibu asks if he'll be attending the unit leader-level tournament tomorrow. He admits that he and his partner have already been knocked out of the competition. He also mentions that a real heavy hitter, Tang Yaxiang of Sichuan, is on his way to the tournament. The mention of the Poison Dragon and his beautiful sister sends Jaseo into a mini panic. The masters excuse themselves, heading off to get ready for whatever's next. They walk away, leaving Jaseo standing there under the awestruck gaze of the bullies. As soon as they're gone, the pain spikes again, and Jaseo doubles over, clutching his chest. The rats find it suspicious that those masters showed him so much respect, wondering if the rumors about his loss of power were wrong. Their eldest brother suddenly shows up, a much more imposing guy with a giant mustache. He figures if they want to teach Jaseo a lesson, they have to strike while he's clearly struggling. Jaseo is in his own world of hurt, gasping as his internal energy feels like it's about to explode out of his chest. He grabs his robe tight, his hand trembling from the sheer pressure building inside him. He looks like a man possessed, his eyes rolling back as the sedative starts to hit his brain. The leader draws his sword, demanding that young hero Heo draw his own weapon and fight. The gang strikes a ridiculous group pose, though they're a bit worried their formation is off balance without their youngest member. Internally, Jaseo is just screaming for it to stop. He's in way too much pain and far too sleepy for this nonsense. Jaseo is at his absolute limit, feeling like his internal energy is about to explode if he doesn't find a way to vent it soon. He clutches his stomach, teeth gritted, as the pressure from the medicine builds up to a dangerous level inside his body. I'm going to burst and die, he thinks, his eyes wide with genuine terror that everyone else mistakes for intense, cold focus. Suddenly, the rhythmic thump of a cane hitting the pavement echoes through the tense atmosphere of the courtyard. An old man strolls leisurely toward the gate of Manhwa Fort, seemingly oblivious to the brewing conflict around him. It's Yop Seung, the legendary king of Poles, and he has a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips as he approaches. The courtyard is thick with tension as the group of bullies known As the 7 rats continues to pressure the disciples, their leader yells out a threat, determined to make Jaseo and the others pay for what happened to their youngest member. Jaseo looks over at them with a look of pure disgust, mostly because they're being loud while he's trying not to pass out. He can't believe these idiots don't recognize the legend standing right next to them and starts barking at them to listen up. He turns toward Heo Jaseo, his expression dark and serious as he begins an impromptu lecture about the old man. He explains that this man is an absolute master, the king of poles, a name that should strike fear into any martial artist. Jaseo continues, telling the story of how the king of poles once lost his internal energy, but refused to let it break his spirit. He tells them that even without his power, it was Heo Jaseo who single-handedly crushed an entire samurai invasion years ago. He screams at the bullies, asking if they really think a master becomes a bottom feeder just because they lose their strength for a while. Heo Jaseo just stands there with his cane, watching the young man lecture his enemies with a look of mild amusement. The old master finally speaks up, calmly telling the young friends to cool their fiery blood for a moment. One of the bullies, completely clueless about who he's talking to, tells the old geezer to stay out of their business. Jaseo ignores the bully and looks at Heo Jaseo with a desperate, sweating face, trying to hold back the pain. He formally apologizes to the senior before asking to borrow his black cane to teach these thugs a lesson. He declares that he's going to turn these ill-mannered rats into proper human beings once and for all. Before the old man can even respond, Jaseo reaches out and snatches the cane with a sudden, desperate burst of speed. But as soon as he has it, the pain hits him again, and he has to lean heavily on the cane just to keep from falling. The bullies start laughing, mocking him for being so weak that he doesn't even look like he has the strength to hold a stick. Jaseo's vision is starting to blur, and his teeth are gritted so hard he's worried they might actually crack. He can feel the energy from the medicine swirling violently through his body, and it's becoming impossible to ignore. He wonders if taking the sleeping pill was a massive mistake, as his mind starts to go fuzzy at the absolute worst time. His whole body feels heavy and stifled, and he starts drooling slightly from the sheer effort of staying conscious. He grips the black cane tightly, his knuckles turning white as he tries to lift the staff to put up even a single fight. Seeing him struggling, the bully leader calls out to his brothers that now is the perfect time to strike. Jaseo remembers his training and decides to drive all that pent-up pain down toward his legs to release it. He grinds his teeth and braces himself, a look of grim determination covering his sweat-drenched face. He slams his foot down with a massive thump, the impact creating a visible shockwave on the ground. "I have to force it out," he screams internally, using the agonizing energy to fuel a sudden burst of power. A huge cloud of dust and a powerful gust of wind erupt from the spot where he stepped, catching everyone by surprise. The sheer force of the shockwave is enough to startle the attackers, stalling their advance for a crucial second. The bullies are completely shocked, wondering how a single step could kick up a gale like that from a weak man. Jaseo is now in a trance-like state, his eyes half closed as the sedative and the pain continue to battle for control of his mind. He blinks, momentarily dazed as the world seems to blur and slow down around him. One of the bullies recovers first and lunges forward, swinging his sword with a desperate shout. Jaseo's survival instincts kick in, and he stares down the incoming blade with wide, unblinking eyes. He shifts his weight and ducks just in time, the sword whistling harmlessly over his head as the attacker flies past him. Jaseo lets out a muffled cry of "it hurts" as the internal pressure from the medicine reaches a boiling point. He strikes one of the bullies with the heavy cane, sending blood flying and teeth rattling with the force of the blow. Tears and drool stream down his face as he screams in agony, though to everyone else, it looks like he's fighting with intense passion. He continues his relentless assault, knocking the 7 rats aside one by one with a level of power that seems far beyond his state. The disciples and onlookers are stunned by the display, wondering why the young hero is crying so uncontrollably while fighting. One of the disciples, deeply moved, assumes that Jaseo is shedding tears of mercy for the wretches he is forced to punish. "I can feel the affection in young hero Eo's cry," another disciple yells, completely misinterpreting the sounds of pure physical torture. Jaseo stands victorious in the middle of the courtyard, surrounded by the fallen and groaning bodies of the bullies. He looms over the leader of the rats, still sobbing and drooling as the sedative continues to wreck his internal balance. The bully leader, beaten and bloody, looks up in genuine confusion, wondering why this monster is crying over his victory. He begs for his life, terrified by the sheer intensity of the mercy being shown to him by the tearful young man. Heo Jaseo, the king of poles, strokes his mustache, and watches the scene with a thoughtful and impressed expression. The leader of the bullies is completely out for the count, his face a mess of bruises and blood after the encounter. Jaseo finally stops, gasping for air as the immediate threat is neutralized and his body begins to demand rest. The disciples rush forward to help, admiring the way Jaseo handled the situation despite his clear, emotional distress. One of the men thanks him profusely, saying how refreshing it is to see someone stand up to those who look down on others. Jaseo takes a deep breath, trying to steady his vision and regain some semblance of dignity after the ordeal. He gestures toward the fallen bullies and asks the disciples to take them away to the jail before they cause any more trouble. The disciples are eager to help, praising Jaseo for caring so much about the fate of even scum like this. They grab the bullies by the hair and drag them away, determined to uphold the sense of justice Jaseo just established. With the crowd dispersing, Jaseo turns back toward the old man, his legs still trembling from the effort. He offers the black cane back to Heo Jaseo, thanking the old-timer for lending him such a reliable weapon. He comments on how heavy the iron cane is, wondering if the old man uses it for some kind of specialized training. Heo Jaseo takes his cane back with a chuckle, curiously asking the boy how he knows so much about the King of Poles. Heo Jaseo tries to play it cool, scratching his head while claiming the King of Poles was his childhood hero. He doubles down on the lie, telling the old man how he used to practice with a staff himself after hearing all those legends. He clenches his fist and talks about how a good staff just has that perfect hand feel. Heo Jaseo is loving it, letting out a loud laugh and agreeing that the kid really gets it. Jaseo gives a polite bow and offers a quick thank you. As the boy walks off with the heavy iron cane, the legendary elder just watches him from behind. The old master is genuinely impressed, thinking he's found a truly interesting kid. The lord of Manhwa Fort rushes over, apologizing for not being there to greet him sooner. Heo Jaseo says it's fine, since he spent his time chatting with a fascinating fellow. The lord looks at the departing Jaseo and explains that the young hero is currently recuperating from a hit by the red-robe white-eyed demon. The old man is shocked, knowing that specific soul-shattering technique is famous for freezing a person's internal energy. The lord invites him to a meal, mentioning some top-shelf liquor has just arrived. Heo Jaseo follows along, feeling satisfied that his trip was definitely worth the effort. Meanwhile, Jaseo is drowning in regret, wishing he never stepped forward and acted like some big shot. Back in the medical hall, he's a total wreck, sweat pouring off him as the frozen energy gets worse. One of Jaseo's roommates stares in absolute disbelief, deeply shocked to see such a legendary warrior reduced to such an irony-laden, miserable plight. The spiky-haired disciple is just as stunned, having never imagined hero Heo could be brought so low. While Jaseo suffers in bed, the two guys sit nearby at a table loaded with luxury food. The bald twin praises the fortress for being outrageously generous to their benefactor, matching such a top-tier standard of hospitality. The other guy agrees, thinking nothing comes for free, and Jaseo has definitely earned this. Jaseo forces himself out of bed, trembling as he tells them he needs the outhouse immediately. He sprints through the fortress, his stomach churning violently from those stolen sedative pills. He clutches his gut in agony, praying for his body to just go back to normal. Sweat drips down his face as he struggles to keep it together. He reaches a breaking point, mentally screaming that he needs to leave this cursed place forever. He makes it to the outhouse door, hoping to figure out a concrete escape plan while he's inside. But he's cut off by the two heroes of Guizhou, who show up out of nowhere to greet him. Jaseo tries to brush them off, desperately telling them he's got very urgent business to handle. The twins just stand there, looking deadly serious as they block his path. They start a long-winded speech about how deeply moved they were by his chivalry and righteousness. As Jaseo finally makes a break for the outhouse, they drop the bomb. They want him to be their lord. Safe inside the stall, Jaseo is losing his mind, wondering why these idiots chose this exact moment to pledge their loyalty. Heo Jaseo steps out, probably hopping for a quiet morning. Instead, he finds the bald twins waiting for him, kneeling in the dirt like he's some kind of royalty. He's already over it, wondering why they're suddenly calling him Lord. One of them starts a whole dramatic speech about wanting to practice chivalry and righteousness. They admit they used to be total scoundrels who only cared about making a quick buck, but seeing him stand up to a literal demon changed their lives, and now they want to be just like him. They've got this intense, determined look in their eyes that spells nothing but trouble for the protagonist. The two heroes of Guizhou swear a formal oath to serve him as their master, effectively ending his dreams of a quiet life. Jaseo just stands there, looking like he's about to have a migraine. He wonders if these guys are just messing with him, or if they've actually got some hidden agenda. He lets out a massive sigh, trying to figure out how to get out of this. He pulls the "I'm powerless" card, reminding them that his internal energy is currently sealed. He insists he's nothing more than a common villager and is basically useless in a fight. He tells them to just go home, since he can't even guarantee he'll ever hold a sword again. But they're not buying it, claiming they want to follow his path, not just his martial skills. Then they go full drama, swearing they'll leave this world behind if they can't be his subordinates. It's a classic Murim rule: the weak follow the strong. But Jaseo walks away feeling like the only weak one here is him, and he's stuck with bodyguards who could crush him. They aren't taking the hint, following him while shouting about offering up their lives. He's starting to feel like his life has turned into a cliché martial arts novel. Since he can't shake them, he just heads down the hall with his new bald shadows in tow. He ducks into another section of the fort, desperately seeking a moment of peace. He just wants to stop standing out before someone actually dangerous notices him. Too late for that. He walks right into a room full of the injured thugs he recently thrashed. It's the rats, and they look like they've been through a meat grinder. The bald brothers immediately leap into action, drawing their blades to protect their lord. They scream at the thugs to back off, ready to turn the clinic into a graveyard. They threaten to start taking off limbs one by one if anyone so much as twitches toward Jaseo. Jaseo puts on a brave face, secretly glad he's got some muscle to hide behind. He tries to look cool, asking the rats if they still have a problem with how he handles things. The leader of the rats suddenly bellows out a greeting, looking like he's found his new god. The entire gang drops into a deep kowtow, begging him to take them in as well. Jaseo's brain is doing backflips as he tries to process what just happened. The lead rat explains that since he accepted the bald twins, they want a spot on the team too. One of the brothers isn't having it, calling them classless thugs who don't understand chivalry. Jaseo tries to mediate, saying he's already got enough subordinates with the two heroes. He tells the rats to just go home, hoping they'll take the rejection gracefully. The lead rat screams no, so hard he practically sprays spit all over the floor. He slams his forehead into the ground, promising to be a groom, a servant, or anything just to stay. He claims he's finally seen the deep intentions behind Jaseo's cold rejection. Jaseo is internally panicking, wondering if these guys collectively ate something rot. He tries to wave them away one last time, insisting there's absolutely no secret meaning behind his words. Chang Ae-hyun is seriously impressed by how humble young Master Eo is acting. Jaseo, on the other hand, is just trying to survive the morning without another disaster. She's starting to think there was more to his recent fight than just pure luck. She suspects he used a secret technique to heal his enemies while he was pummeling them. And the thugs who actually caught those hands, they're convinced of the exact same thing. They think his tears were a sign of his deep compassion, not just pure physical pain. Jaseo is just staring at his tea, wondering how his life got this weird this fast. He definitely never signed up to be the local saint of martial arts. He tries to focus on his meal, but the weight of everyone's expectations is starting to kill his appetite. He knows that having a bunch of followers in a place like this is just a giant red flag for the fort lord. Right on cue, the lord of Manhwa Fort walks in to join the conversation. He tells Jaseo that there's no need to hide his light under a bushel anymore. He officially labels him a true hero for saving his daughter from the white-eyed devil. Then he drops a bombshell. He thinks Jaseo should just keep those thugs as his own private squad. Jaseo is internally screaming because he knows these guys will probably betray him by lunch. But the lord isn't listening. He's already busy preparing a special gift to reward his bravery. Jaseo quickly learns the hard way that there's absolutely no such thing as a free lunch. The VIP treatment starts with a customized meal that looks way too spicy for his own good. As soon as he got back to his room, his two roommates were even enthusiastically trying to spoon-feed him like a toddler. He struggles to keep it down, while hearing that he's become the main character of every rumor in the market. He can feel the bad luck piling up, and he's starting to get a very bad feeling about where this is going. Rescuing the Lord's daughter was apparently just the opening act for his new life of misery. Taking down a high-level demon like the white-eyed devil has turned him into a living legend. Now he's stuck with the two heroes of Guizhou, following his every move. Even the local scoundrels have rebranded themselves as the Sichuan Cats, just to be associated with him. His new moniker is spreading faster than the names of the most famous sects in the region. People are calling him the Great Small Hero, which makes him want to crawl into a hole and die. For the moment, he's just enjoying the luxury of sleeping in and not worrying about his next meal. He figures he can handle the fame as long as his real identity stays buried. But deep down, He knows this peaceful lifestyle is about to go up in flames. He can't stop thinking about what that mysterious, special gift from the Lord might be. The sudden excessive hospitality is making his survival instincts go haywire. In the Murim world, an open hand usually has a hidden knife somewhere nearby. He's soon summoned to meet the Lord again, right in the middle of a depressing downpour. He trudges through the courtyard, feeling like a lamb being led to the slaughter. He's racking his brain, wondering what kind of trouble the Lord is going to dump on him next. He's escorted down a long, quiet corridor that feels way too formal for his liking. He steps into a massive hall and offers a bow to the figures waiting for him. He finds two powerful-looking elders sitting in the shadows of the throne room. The one with the impressive white beard, Mok Galjin, asks if he's actually the famous Heo Jaseo. The Murim hierarchy is a strict ladder, based almost entirely on how much internal energy you've cultivated. Someone like Thin Face Sword is considered a second-class warrior, which usually takes 30 years of hard work. Reaching the status of a first-class warrior requires a staggering 60 years of internal energy, a full cycle known as a gapcha. Beyond that lies the realm of the peak masters, those who wield an incredible 120 years of accumulated power. At the absolute summit are the top 100 masters, beings who have transcended the peak and are nearing the legendary super peak. Standing before Heo Jaseo is the former fort lord of 10,000 Dragons Fort, Mok Galjin, a venerable master with a long white beard. Jaseo is gripped by a sudden, cold panic as he realizes exactly who he's standing in front of. He's desperately trying to figure out why a living legend like the former fort lord would want to meet with a nobody like him. He drops into a deep bow, his mind racing to remember every rule of etiquette he's ever heard. Identifying himself as a mere junior of the Murim, Heo Jaseo pays his formal respects with as much grace as he can muster. Mok Galjin watches him with a sharp, calculating gaze, flanked by another formidable elder. He notes that Jaseo is just as humble and polite as the rumors suggested he would be. The elder gestures for him to approach, his voice carrying an authority that makes Jaseo's skin crawl. He explains that he's been waiting specifically to meet the young man who saved his precious granddaughter. He mentions that the current fort lord has already prepared a significant reward for his bravery. Jaseo immediately waves it off, playing the part of the selfless hero while internally wishing he could just teleport away. He insists that any righteous martial artist would have done the exact same thing in his position. He claims that the honor of being hosted at the 10,000 Dragons Fort is more than enough for him. The second elder, Heo Jaseo, is genuinely impressed by Jaseo's unwavering composure despite his supposedly sealed energy. Heo Jaseo remarks that Jaseo is undoubtedly a man of rare chivalry to be so calm after such a harrowing ordeal. Heo Jaseo studies him closely, his eyes narrowing as he considers the rumors about Jaseo's current state. He notes that the effect of the White Devil's 10 palms on Jaseo's physical condition is quite unusual. He reaches out, expressing a keen interest in taking a closer look at the young master's energy meridians. Jaseo nearly jumps out of his skin, terrified that a master of this level will see through his facade in an instant. Fortunately, Mok Galjin interjects, reminding his friend that they have urgent business to attend to. He teases Heo Jaseo for being so enamored with their guest that he'd forget his own duties. Mok Galjin smiles at Jaseo, seemingly satisfied with the brief interaction they've had so far. He asks to be excused for a moment, as he has something private he needs to discuss with his fellow elder. Jaseo can't believe his luck. It seems his secret is safe for at least another few minutes. As Mok Galjin turns to leave, he remarks to himself that it's been a very lucky day indeed. The two masters walk away, leaving Jaseo alone in the massive, intimidating hall. Before he goes, Heo Jaseo reaches into his robe and pulls out an old, weathered-looking book. Jaseo is confused as the book is thrust toward him, wondering what kind of trap this might be. Heo Jaseo explains that it's not a secret manual, just some basic notes he's jotted down over the years. He adds with a grin that for someone in Jaseo's situation, these basics might be worth more than gold. Jaseo stares at the book in his hands, wondering if he's just been handed a priceless treasure or a total prank. The elder asks him if he has no desire for martial arts knowledge, since he already rejected the material wealth. He tells Jaseo to take it without feeling burdened, as it only covers the absolute fundamentals of the craft. He suggests that a talent like Jaseo should be able to find some level of enlightenment within its pages. He expresses his hope that the contents will help Jaseo recover from the loss of his internal energy. He casually mentions that if Jaseo finds it useless, he can just toss it away after reading. Jaseo stands there in silence, wondering what the real intention behind this sudden gift could be. He knows that a book handled so casually, by a man who treats mock Galjin as an equal can't possibly be ordinary. He looks down at the cover, noticing the visible wear and tear that speaks of years of intense study and struggle. Heo Jaseo remains in the vast, empty hall, clutching the worn book and wondering why such a legendary figure would give it to him. He flips open the pages, only to find diagrams of internal energy circulation sitting right next to instructions on when to add noodles to boiling water. The sight of cooking tips mixed with martial secrets leaves Jaseo completely baffled and more than a little concerned about the elder's mental state. As he watches the mysterious old man walk away, he can't help but wonder about the true identity of the eccentric king of poles. Outside, the storm continues to rage, lightning flashing over the dark, tiled roofs of the massive 10,000 Dragons fort. Jaseo eventually makes his way to a private room, where the current lord of Manhwa Fort awaits him at a low table. The fort lord wastes no time, urgently telling Jaseo to open a wooden box that has just been prepared for him. Seeing the ornate container, Jaseo's mind immediately fills with visions of wealth and a comfortable life far away from the Murim world. He opens the lid and is nearly blinded by a brilliant, golden light reflecting off a perfect sphere nestled in red silk. The fort lord watches with a knowing smirk, asking Jaseo if he has the experience to recognize such a legendary item. Jaseo is practically drooling, convinced that this massive lump of gold is his ticket to a permanent retirement. His dreams of easy living are shattered when the Lord identifies it as the Sun Gold Elixir, a miraculous medicine from the Sun Palace. Jaseo's jaw drops as the reality of the situation hits him. This isn't just gold. It's a treasure that the entire martial world would kill for. He remembers hearing that items from the Sun Palace, one of the two legendary pillars of Murim, cannot be bought with mere money. Every instinct he's developed as a lowly underling begins to scream a single, terrifying message. He is absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, screwed. He realizes that being given a gift of this magnitude means the fort lord expects something far more dangerous than simple gratitude in return. He sits in silence, staring at the glowing elixir and realizing it's less of a reward and more of a golden chain binding him to the fort. The pressure in the room becomes suffocating as Jaseo contemplates the consequences of accepting such a heavy favor. An old saying echoes in his mind: a warrior who fails to leave when the time is right will eventually find himself leaving in a coffin. The lord of Manhwa Fort turns toward the rain-slicked balcony, his voice dropping as he prepares to ask for a favor. Jaseo braces himself, his earlier excitement completely replaced by a cold sense of dread. The Lord reveals that the Murim Alliance has issued a formal notice for a punitive expedition across the entire Sichuan province. Jaseo echoes the words with a grim expression, knowing that a punitive expedition is synonymous with a bloodbath. The Lord explains that it's a mobilization order meant to bring together the local sects to hunt down and eradicate the enemies of the public. The fort lord looks out at the storm, explaining that things are a mess and they don't have enough men to pull off a proper expedition. He's got a problem, and he thinks he's found the perfect guy to solve it. Out of nowhere, he asks Jaseo if he'll step up and lead the entire punitive force. Jaseo's brain just short-circuits. He knows he's being played by an absolute pro. He realizes this is just a trap to force him, and those thugs he beat up into a meat grinder. He sits there in a cold sweat, trying to figure out a way to say no without looking like a coward. The Lord just keeps piling on the praise, calling him a man who truly puts righteousness first. Then comes the hook. He offers 10 yang of silver for the men following him. He plays it smooth, acting like he knows Jaseo is way too noble to care about money. Then he drops the bomb. He's actually giving him 10 yang of gold. Jaseo stands up so fast he nearly flips the table. Gold, 10 whole bars. He's already doing the math on how many years of luxury that buys. One minute he's a nobody. The next he's making a fortune just by pretending to be a master. He puts on his best hero face and thanks the fort lord, acting like the money is just a nice bonus for his men. Feeling cocky, he asks who the target is, claiming he can't sit by while evil threats exist. The lord's tone shifts instantly. They're going after the blood demon monks. Jaseo's heart just stops. He's heard of these guys, and they are not the kind you mess with for some gold. Just thinking about them brings up flashes of blood-soaked hands and pure violence. These monks are actual monsters. Bald, glowing-eyed psychos who leave mountains of bodies in their wake. He's literally vibrating with fear. He just sold his soul for 10 gold coins, and he's regretting the math already. While the Lord talks about all the sects that have already been wiped out, Jaseo is having a total internal meltdown. The Murim Alliance is losing their minds over this, and the Lord is leaning into the drama. He turns back with a look of pure authority, Ready to make it official, he formally appoints Jaseo as the leader of the expedition representing the fort. Jaseo just stands there, his soul basically leaving his body as the reality of his greed sets in.